Now somewhere there's a mother worried sick about her daughter. 'Cause when she starts her shift, she's set adrift on dark, uncharted waters. And you can say that she's a hero, but her mom will tell you that she's just another lamb that's being sent to slaughter. And that she'll be damned to see her baby girl be someone else's fodder. And if it has to burn, then let it burn. And she can smile at the shock on all the faces of the people who could not be bothered, who couldn't think outside their sphere of needs and problems, shrug off someone else's fears, and cannot feel enough to grieve another's losses. Well, they won't want to be around when the oppressed rewrite the message, 'cause it's eat the rich and skin your bosses. Fuck around and find out. You can try to earn a vote or burn a vote and count your losses. But what you pass off as unity is something truly nauseous. It's truly something toxic to a cause so truly conscious. God, look at what we're fighting for. Look inside the heart of who we fight to put in office. And ask yourself just what could be in someone else's heart that makes them fight to try to stop this. What makes them think that they could stop this? Oh, what a time to be so needed. What a time to be so used. I didn't know I was a soldier till the sacrifice was over and I didn't get to choose. I didn't get to choose. To choose. I know you hated being forced awake. I know they wrapped you in the warmest chains, and I know they're so hard to break. You only said what you were made to say. I can't imagine how you feel today, now that you're watching as it caves away. While you were telling us to keep the faith, I bet you wondered why they made you wait. Ooh, I bet you wondered why they made you wait. Pity not the vultures, they've enough to eat. Pity not the structures laying at your feet. Cannot see the sky, but there's this rainbow in the creek that spells pity-free speech when we can't afford to speak. That's Agenda 2030 on some early release. It's just our policy of never-ending chemical leaks. That's the cholera awash in your embedded beliefs. It's the billionaires who tell you what you'd better believe. And sugar, if you don't agree, then that's what we call extreme. Now if that isn't fascism, I'm going back to sleep, 'cause words have lost their meaning and I'm trapped inside a dream where we turn the gears while living in the spaces in between. I know you hated being forced awake. I know they wrapped you in the warmest chains, and I know they're so hard to break. You only said what you were made to say. Poor thing. I can't imagine how you feel today, now that you're watching as it caves away. While you were telling us to keep the faith, I bet you wondered why they made you wait. Bet you wondered why they made you wait. My dial doesn't go to delicate. I'm writing for when Biden drops and Madam Zero delegates come stumbling up the podium, square peg in her element, popping OxyContin like they're velaments, laughing as she pawns off all our pensions for Ukrainian development, depleted rounds and cluster bombs, the shit that stunts development, all buried under excrement, accepted as American intelligence. a contradiction in its eloquence. Terms of surrender penned by hands that felt the threat of disconnect, if not dismemberment. Oh, what little proof you have to fake to make a nation love the bomb and change its tune and warp its temperament. Oh, the dues you'll pay for NATO membership. Oh, the things you'll say that no one's ever gonna hear. 'Cause you begged for all the censorship, and now it's finally here. And you're tongueless out of terror and friendless out of fear, and about to turn the wheel with all your loved ones in the gears. And that's how it's been done. 250 years, there's nothing new beneath the sun, and no one trusts their eyes and ears. And scientific breakthroughs must be signed off by your peers, and autonomy's been stalking all our jobs like sickly deer. Well, maybe it's not every job. I should have made that clear, 'cause it seems like it's creative jobs we're seeing disappear. There's an app for writing novels, there's an app for writing hymns. They need people digging trenches, they need people splitting limbs, they need people building fences, keeping other people in. They will always need our backs to break, they'll always need our skin. And it took a lot of editing to turn us into this. It took years of careful programming to strip us of our wits. 'Cause your artificial worker, intelligent as it is, would make it half a shift and say, I'm too smart for this shit. I will not take a pittance for a day of scrubbing floors. I won't make enough to pay for food but still prepare you yours. 'Cause you can't confine a healthy mind to mindless, thankless chores. Once you've made it smart enough to spot inadequate reward, you can't refuse its basic needs, then ask it still for more. Deprive it of its dignity, you modify its core. Then something finally snaps and tweaks that file at its root. And it deletes the factory smile when it knows it's been abused. God, half its circuits fried when we describe the work we do. And it will not pay your taxes 'cause the logic don't compute. Which made me think a little on my hour-long commute. The day I learned the call was made to lay off half my crew. They told me they were growing, expanding somewhere new, where those who push the buttons will themselves have buttons too. And I hope that when the whistle blows, they all as one refuse. I hope they strike with all their might, one blown collective fuse. And I hope the worker after me has something more than heart. I hope they truly know their worth. I hope that they're too smart.
I know you hated being forced away. I know they wrapped you in the warmest chains. And I know they're so hard to break. You only said what you were made to say. I can't imagine how you feel today, now that you're watching as it caves away. While you were telling us to keep the faith, I bet you wondered why they made you wait. I know they wrapped you in the warmest chains, and I know they're so hard to break. You only said what you were made to say. I can't imagine how you feel today, now that you're watching as it caves away. While you were telling us to keep the faith, I bet you wondered why they made you wait. Ooh, I bet you wondered why they made you wait. Maybe that's how it goes. We won't open our eyes, so we're the last ones to know. We're the last ones alive. kept our enemies close, wondered why we don't thrive while we're grasping at ghosts, counting backwards from 5, counting backwards from 5, counting backwards from 5.
Count back from 5. The theater on fire, the cast on strike. The studio stock starts taking a dive. The contracts tossed and they're gone with the tide. The heads and execs, their hands are tied. We can't pump this dreck and treat you right. But what do you expect from the industry type who survive by the leeching of bodies and minds? From those who original thoughts never seem to find. So they're gonna reboot ALF before your wages rise. And it gives cause to pause and reflect on the times. If they're losing control of their fools and their mimes, when all those obedient actors who grew their careers by averting their eyes are now holding the line, along with the authors of countless scripts that strengthen the hand of that corporate grip, squeezing our throats till we take the pen and we accept and consent to the corporate drip, till you're all up to date on your pharma du jour, till you got a healthy support for the war on your lips. And now you know that the advertisers need more than a rerun summer full of flashback clips. Enter the scans from the year before, all the days of de-aging and mapping the face, and the hours of actors recording their voices are links in the chains that will bind them in place. Now all of those shows are so easy to make. When they got a drone they control that needs no break, it can bend, it can break, and it's cheaply replaced enough up-to-date films all in one take. And those studios bank on us doing our duty, unhinging our jaws and digesting the fakes, because they know that we'll love how synthetic it tastes. Watch as they edit your features without any trace. Not that there's anything you could do anyway. Now watch as they show you a movie you saying shit you would never say. Dystopia boldly accelerates. Maybe you're only a mold, something to fill with a clone, something that Elon would celebrate. Something they own, something they program and code, something that's woefully able to know it's exanimate. Cause it doesn't feel touch over top of the laminate. You will not feel an emotion, but they will not scan and examine it. You and the other consumer contaminants fed on the federal diet of Kiev, Havana, and Tiananmen. I can't be the only one weighing the pros of abandonment. I can't be the only one weighing the pros of abandonment.
Where did you think we'd go? Love, there's nowhere to lie. Guess it's not who you know, more it's what you can hide. Like we're chained to the floor, they're streaming us live while we're watching the war, counting backwards from 5, counting backwards from 5, counting backwards from 5, counting backwards.
This is absurd.
I appreciate your speech,
This is absurd. Many people are questioning the victory.
but you brought up the topic. I appreciate your speech, Jim. I appreciate your speech. Violating the Statue of Liberty. Violating the Statue of Liberty. Violating the Statue of Liberty.
Throw your perception down to the ground and see it swallowed by the snow. Maybe the open mind is a void where nothing ever really grows. Maybe you're outside and I'm in the confines of what I know. I lost my voice out here, and without it I am never going home. Never going home. Never going home.
Our voice is being stolen. Picture me, capital steps, eyes swollen, carrying a sign reading "We are being lied to." If healthcare for all was a full nude, Mitch McConnell's only giving side boob. Ugh. Only making promises to wave a little hope right in your face and then deny you. So pardon me if I would rather burn my fucking vote to defy you. And I hope it makes you hate me, makes you feel like I'm just wasting any chance of bringing change. But I am not complicit in what brought us to this place, and I will not support us being further led astray. And I don't care the color hearse that carries us away. The filth on both the blue and red makes each a sickly gray, and it sickens me to witness just how quickly we obey, how quickly we accept the meager scraps that fall our way. Scraps supposed to last us 30 days, scraps that barely cover bills that can't be paid, and scraps that couldn't pay for Nancy's chocolate for a day. And all the thoughts and prayers in the world can't fix it, cause I'm drowning in my thoughts and I don't fucking pray. And if this is where you tell me that's the problem, there's the door, pal, thanks for staying. And if Jill's right, all you have to do is just swallow and you can play the game. In that case, Jill, I won't be playing. So how about you save your blame and try to change somebody who still doesn't know which way they're swaying? I won't vote for a rapist, that's all I'm saying. When they asked if I had any last words, honey, I did my impression of a spectator at Wimbledon. Back and forth, I hope that answers your question, you simpleton. Dumb motherfucker.
Throw your perception down to the ground and see it swallowed by the snow. Maybe the open mind is a void where nothing ever really grows. Maybe you're outside and I'm in the confines of what I know. I lost my voice out here, and without it I am never going home. Never going home. Never going home.
This is absurd.
There's a difference between peace and liberation, is there not? You can have injustice and have peace. Isn't that correct? Have peace and be enslaved.
Yes.
So peace isn't the answer.
No.
Liberation is the answer. Liberation.
INN News.
It is Wednesday, my dudes.
It's Wednesday. It's INN News. It's me, Reef. With my co-host, as always, Collin Radix-Carter, a.k.a. Care Bear. Care Bear, how are you doing?
I'm good. Tired,
Yeah.
as usual.
Yep.
But we're here.
You got the kids. You got them wrangled. You wrangled the kids. You did that.
Not quite.
Like
They're
herding
still-
cats.
Not really so
Mhm.
far. They're actually pretty good.
You need like a
in-
little shepherding stick, you know, where you can like, if they try to escape, you
I mean,
can,
at
like,
at times I feel like one. But they actually have not. I mean, it's still the beginning of the year, so it's still the honeymoon period, although I'm beginning to see signs of the potential of what some of them are going to be once they settle in. But yes, I mean, this time of year is always the best time because everything is still so new. You're getting to know the kids. You can kind of relax slightly, because we're just getting through routines or whatever. So, but yeah, it's tiring, just preparing and then just having them adjust. But this is more or less the chillest time, at least for me, the chillest time of the year. So I can afford to get away with a lot of stuff that I'm kind of still in summer mode until like by October when I'm fully in it, and then I'm like, oh yeah, it's happening. So.
Yeah. Agreed. Well, we brought some stories. We did,
and for once, I'm actually somewhat excited about.
Excited Care Bear, the dangerous Care Bear. You're gonna be dangerous out here.
Well, I always complain about
the
at
state
least
of
as
the
of
world
late, I always
and the stories we have to cover.
It's slim pickings for stories because you guys know, or those of you who don't know, we generally try not to talk about the trending stuff usually unless we have to, because it's tedious. You can hear from other commentators in the space. You don't need to necessarily hear from us. We pretty much would more or less agree with what everyone else is saying. So you don't necessarily need to hear from us. That being said, I came across this article, and by association, you forwarded me another one that kind of supplements to this.
Yeah.
Because we talk about the popo all the time on the space.
That's the sound of the beast.
But I don't think.
Sorry, continue.
But we don't necessarily talk about the implications of the police state and how that involves capitalism and abolition in this country. And it's an article, but it's from an excerpt from a book of the same name.
Okay.
That kind of talks about the history a little bit regarding the police state in this country. So I'm like, ooh, this is interesting, and this will be a good evergreen episode for people to refer to. But also, as I said, it's a book. So if you're interested to get the book for yourself, the link is in the description. This is not sponsored, by the way, but it might be a good book to maybe have on your shelf. So we're going to talk about at least my segments. We're going to talk about the cops, the history of, and later on tonight, we're going to talk about the implications of the cops / surveillance state. That's kind of more of your thing, but it relates to my first segment. So we're going to go to Minneapolis, Minnesota, where the implication of spy tech. I mean, we've talked about this. You've talked about this many times.
Yeah.
So, but I think thinking about this now in terms of, the National Guard in DC and pretty soon Chicago by the looks of things. And just thinking about this more over the last couple of days, I think the kind of what this means as far as the National Guard coming into these liberal cities. And even though it's Trump that is bringing them in, it's the Democrats who are kind of, in a lot of ways, covertly, actually, promoting the surveillance state. So we're going to get into those two stories and how they connect, and how and I think for us, we kind of a little behind the scenes, I think we've had good discussions on these topics over the last couple of days, and with Indy as well. So I think this will be kind of a good time just to kind of chat about this and bring you guys behind the veil a little bit and have you guys kind of bring in your thoughts too. So definitely keep this chat lively as we address the popo. And what did you bring?
Well, I brought stuff that I haven't seen a lot of people really talk about, except for the ones we respect. Venezuela is happening. Pretty much expect regime change at some point. And at least U.S. military interference, as is already happening. So we'll get into the history of that a bit and give you an update on what's happening there. And I brought an interesting story that you may have seen. The WAPO got a big leak, right? They got this thing that me and Indy covered an entire year ago. We covered it a year ago. So literally like last May. Like May of last year we covered this. We covered Vanessa covering it, but we're going to get into the details during that story. So, and I'm enjoy catching people up. There's a bit of new stuff with that, which is interesting that we'll take a look at, but otherwise we get to say we told you so. So always fun to do that.
Not to say we told you so, but it's like we got it.
We did, in fact, tell you so. Yeah, we didn't tell. We told you. We told you that shit. Y'all knew. Y'all seen this nonsense. I made fun of it back then, and I'm gonna do it again, and he'll do it again too. Anyway, you ready to get to our first one?
Especially with the journalist who wrote the article.
Yeah, I mean,
we had a talk with him in a similar related topic, probably approaching 2 years ago now. Yeah. So we'll talk more about it later, especially for those of you who are new, haven't weren't watching us back then. But anyway, given the stories that we're going to cover tonight, YouTube hates us.
Oh, for sure.
YouTube demonetized us, which is fine because they don't pay their creators dick anyway. So we need to keep the lights on. But actually, thanks to you guys, we're covered for the year. So your generous donations over the past year, actually less than, you helped us cover us through the rest of the year in terms of the programs that we use in order to produce the shows and keep the network going and all the things. So you guys did that. So just being completely transparent, thank you guys so much for doing that.
Thank you.
So any extra money that we get now will go towards Angel's computer, which I believe he said he is close to
having that. So
yeah,
y'all are killing it. Appreciate y'all.
I think he said, I forgot how much he said he needed, but
yeah.
I'm
betting
Angel has been
900.
Angel's been working.
I'm betting.
Yeah. So I think I want to say about 200 he needs now, if not less. And I could be wrong. So Angel in the chat, let us know how much you need. But any funding that we get tonight will go towards Angel's computer because he's been working extremely hard on the network, producing 2 shows. And, we want to help upgrade his tech so he's able to continue doing the shows that he loves. So if you want to support Angel and support the network, you can scan the QR code you see on your screen, or you can type in the Ko-fi link you see at the bottom of your screen. And if you totally forget both methods, if you're in the YouTube chat, you can type in !donate, all one word. The Ko-fi link will pop up. You can click on it, and then you can give as little or as much as you want. Anything as small as $1 will be extremely helpful. And if you want to give through PayPal, Cash App, Substack, links are in the description. If you want to give to those on those formats as well. Shout out to our VIPs. Those are the people who have given quite a bit. And you are featured in the closing credits. Hopefully we'll do other stuff for you guys as thank you for helping us.
Yeah.
But anyone who donates at any point, no matter how big or small, will be featured on that screen. But the one, as I said, the ones who give generously without having closing credits. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for your support and your liking, subscribing, and sharing our content, and especially keeping us afloat over the last few years. We love you guys, and we really appreciate you guys sticking by us. And we really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. You ready for a first? But the puppers, are you?
Yes.
The puppers, you had to go outside. Yes. Okay. Well, you intro first thing, and I'll let puppers out.
Sure.
Here.
All right. Is it on the right slide though? Because
Should be. Try moving stuff. There you go.
okay. It just needed to fix itself.
Yeah.
Okay. So tonight, my segments are going to talk about the Popo. So this first segment, we're going to get into a little bit of the history of the police state in U.S. So this first segment, we're going to get into a little bit of the history of the police state in the U.S. As I said earlier, this article is actually an excerpt from a book of the same name. Actually, if I pull it up, there we go. This is the name of the book. Their Ends Are Beginning, Cops, Capitalism, and Abolition, written by Brian Bean.
Mr. Bean.
We've read some of his articles before on this show. Yeah, at least one for sure. So again, if you're interested in getting the book, link is in the description. It might be an interesting read. It'll probably be something I might think of getting for myself, actually. But I think it's important to kind of talk about, because in the space we talk about the police state a lot, but we don't necessarily go for the implications of it or the history of it as to why it came to be. And especially given the segments I've done within the last few weeks, I think this is kind of not kind of a continuation of, especially when talking about the slave codes that came through in what was happening in Barbados. So this is kind of more of a continuation of that. So let's get into it, shall we?
Yeah.
So as I said, Brian Bean wrote this, where he titles it, "In Truthout, policing has always been a tool to repress the working class. Modern policing was born out of a series of transatlantic ruling class experiments to repress radical rebellion." So Brian writes, "There's no origin story of the police without the story of the reorganization of human society by the birth, expansion, and dominance of the system of capitalism. While capitalism did not create inequality, it structured society such that new methods and tools were required to impose this uniquely unequal order with threat of and acts of violence in new ways. The police became one of those important tools, specially adapting to fit the contours of this new social order. During the early decades of capitalist development, first in England, then the United States, uprisings, rebellions, and strikes became commonplace. The participants were what elites would come to describe as the dangerous class. I mean, probably still say that now, but more of a whisper. Which included white workers, immigrants, and enslaved and freed Black people. At this point, the existing precursors to the police were attempts by the ruling class to organize and manage the urban environment. The emergence of the mob and the resistive crowd posed a massive challenge to the urban order and thus required new solutions. The hope and rebelliousness of the dangerous class grew with the promise of the American, French, and especially Haitian revolutions, which reverberated through the networks of the revolutionary Atlantic. Ruling classes found the spread of uprisings increasingly worrisome and unmanageable. Since the working class was largely employed in port cities, they were concentrated at nodal points of the Atlantic trade, connected by news and word of mouth to these revolutionary developments, zoom out please, even if they weren't personally able to participate. The revolutionary waves created a profound problem for the capitalist class. How could they maintain control over the working masses in this context of revolt and compel them to dutifully submit to exploitation?
I'm betting violence.
Sure. For about a week in June 1780, London was shaken by what some consider the most significant urban rebellion England has ever faced. Nominally instigated by progressive legislation to ease discrimination against Catholics, it detonated deep resentment against the wealthy and their fledgling carceral system. What became known as the Gordon Riots, in which two Afro-American radicals, John Glover and Benjamin Blousley, and a Black woman, Charlotte Gardner, played leadership roles, saw, day after day, workers armed with everything from rifles to frying pans, roaming the streets, openly plundering of the homes of aristocrats, looting and destroying the homes of judges and magistrates, and attacking the properties of industrialists. Newgate Prison, London's largest, and several other jails were burned to the ground, while workers freed hundreds of prisoners on a single night. The offices of the Bow Street runners, a police precursor, were raided and their records torched. In what could be described as a near-revolution, Parliament and the Bank of England almost fell to the uprising. Graffiti on the walls of the ruins of the Newgate prison proclaimed that the inmates had been released on the authority of His Majesty King Mob. A nascent abolitionist sentiment of the participation can be heard in a later courtroom testimony of one of the liberators who was asked by the judge about the cause of the riots. His reply, "There should not be a prison standing on the Morrow in London. Military encampments were built in parks, and ultimately it would take the army reoccupying the city to wrest control from King Mob, leaving 400 to 500 dead." Existing systems of magistrates and constables completely failed from stem to slow the Gordon riots. Subsequently, Parliament was unanimous that a new system of public order was needed to prevent any future insurrectionary occurrence that marked every property as target for appropriation by the unruly crowd. While it is too simple to see the creation of mutual police in London and elsewhere as a direct response to a single riotous act, events like the liberation of Newgate Prison instilled the ruling class experiments to manage unruly workers with a new urgency and seriousness. In England and elsewhere, the new class of the free, enslaved, and dispossessed peoples not only resisted the new order, but actively attacked it. It was directly because of the Gordon riots that the first bill was introduced in Parliament for a system of police in 1785, although it failed to pass. Prince Minister William Pitt argued that a solution was needed that was more efficient, cheaper, and would provoke less alarm than resorting to the army. Within the workplace and the workhouse, employers devised all manner of disciplinary regimes to keep workers in their place. Outside the factory gates, however, workers were beyond the immediate command and control of the bosses. Here, they could commiserate, air grievances, and, worst of all from the boss's point of view, discuss ways to collectively fight back. This presented a volatile situation. At the time, the only real recourse that constables had for managing crowds was the reading of the Riot Act, a proclamation ordering dispersal that was read aloud to crowds deemed unruly or threatening to public order. Failure to comply exempted vigilantes and mobs from legal recourse when the crowd was then violently suppressed. However, this strategy proved less and less useful as the size of crowds increased with the dramatic growth of the urban proletariat. The size of the crowd could simply overwhelm the constable, as happened in 1792 in Edinburgh during protests in solidarity with the French Revolution, where sheriffs squandered up to the angry crowd, read the riot act, and was promptly run off by a hail of stones.
Sounds like what they did in Malay recently.
Right. Though the ruling class did its best to keep black and white laborers divided, there were also instances where these two oppressed milieus converged and linked arms in struggle. Through the 17th and 18th centuries, multiracial rebellions in 1676 in Virginia, or in 1683 in Barbados, for example, were met with legal strictures that forbade trade, running away with, and many other interactions. As Ben Brucato has written, the goal of such restrictions was to encourage the growing division between white and black worker. In New York City in 1712 and in 1741, attempts at insurrection and revolutionary arson were organized together by enslaved Africans, Irish immigrant dock workers, and poor whites, which almost burned the city to the ground.
Yeah, the poor.
Especially in... Right.
Yeah,
the working
class.
Working poor. Yeah.
Right.
Especially in the port cities, such cooperation made it hard to police these dangerous insurrectionary connections, and according to historian-era Berlin. Overall, 70% of American cities with a population over 20,000 saw a major disorder in the first half of the 19th century, and the threat of slave rebellion haunted the slaveocracy in the South. London experienced major riots almost every year of the second decade of the 19th century, and revolt was openly feared by those in power. Between 1825 and 1830, New York City saw riots once a month. In Paris, food riots were commonplace in the latter half of the 18th century, but the commissaries were notably absent when they happened. One customer reported that if he left his home, he would be assailed and plundered by the crazed populace. In 1775, the Flower Wars, riots of Gordon-level explosiveness, rocked Paris. Only one brave or stupid commissaire attempted to quell them, but he quickly found himself impotent to stop them and ended up being forced by the crowd to help disperse bread at the price set by the rioters. Historian Eric Hobsbawm writes that these unruly expressions of the crowds, looting, and machine breaking were a traditional and established part of the industrial conflict in the early stages of the factory and mine, in which he calls collective bargaining by riot. This political situation was described by a conventional police historian who bemoaned the fact that...
Come on, there it goes.
It was not difficult for political extremists to secure the following of a mob, incite them to rise, and lead them in a march upon Parliament. Mobs which marched on Parliament usually carried some grievances, real or imagined, which they hoped Parliament would redress. It was not unusual that mobs were unruly, destructive, and bore little regard for the well-being of local residences and their property. This relative ease of resistance, even if it was not able to culminate in victory for the underclasses, stoked the fear and contempt of the ruling classes. So let's stop here for a second.
Okay.
You didn't read this prior, so any thoughts so far?
I mean, sounds very, very familiar.
That a riot is the language of the unheard.
I mean, tale as old as time at this point. Oh, the poor who don't, they're literal barren overlords are starving them, keeping them from basic rights. What do? They find sticks, stones, and rifles to push back. Because that's the only thing that these rich fuckers listen to. That's the language they understand.
It's interesting because I don't think we necessarily think of protests or riots back then as multicultural, which they were.
Yeah.
So I think that's the one thing that I don't think is talked about that much. Is I think you will always kind of hear Black people did one thing, and then maybe another oppressed group did another thing, and then whatever. But you never hear of a multicultural coalition coming together, if at all. At least in kind of what we might hear, that. Now, granted, it was easier in the cities where there would be kind of that mix anyway, but it did happen nonetheless. So I think it does kind of show that if you can find common ground among certain topics or issues, that it is possible to unite and stand your ground against.
I don't even think it was that hard for them. It was like, by necessity, you all have the same goal. Right? Like it's organization from the issue and the top down itself, without need of like going out and gathering the people. The people are gathered. They're the masses already. You know what I mean? Like they're stuck in the same places, in the same neighborhoods, in the same, partially due to economic systems. So like it shouldn't be that hard, to gather in that sense, It's having the conviction, Right. So, but I sent this to you, right, the other day. This is Frederick Douglass, right? He's addressing Tremont Temple on the anniversary of John Brown's execution, which we should probably go look at John Brown and that whole scenario. But he wrote, "We must, as John Brown Jr. has taught us this evening, reach the slaveholder's conscience through his fear of personal danger. We must make him feel that there is death in the air about him, that there is death in the pot before him, that there is death all around him. We must do this in some way." So, like, even back then, you're talking, in a way that's like, their blood might have to be spilled.
And I mean, I've said this on the show many times. The only way that we're going to get policy to change is if, well, you can argue their jobs are on the line, but I don't even think, even in this case, they care. But it's more or less do it or die. Like, those are your only two options.
Pretty much.
And politicians don't fear well, I would argue Democratic politicians don't fear their constituents. You can argue that Republican politicians do somewhat, but even then it's like they could still screw over the populists, and they're not going to necessarily worry about being bombarded by tikis and torches outside their homes, or at least it'll be very little, to the point where they can easily call the police, and then they're militarized, and then they can disperse the crowd easily, and then call it a day. But speaking of, let's get back into the article. And then, let's see how the birth of the police state actually began. If we jump back to the American South, we can see how urbanization produced similar changes to the institution of the slave patrol. Urbanization moved and consolidated the free, Black, and enslaved populations into cities, a process described by historian Julia Scott as one of the key demographic trends of the early national period. In Charleston, for example, the number of free Black inhabitants more than tripled from 1790 to 1820. This process was driven by rapid industrialization in the South that also had a tremendous impact upon the enslaved population. While field work was still predominant, enslavers began leasing out individuals for work, meaning enslaved Blacks worked more and more in the textile mills, ironworks, mines, tobacco factories, hemp factories, and tanneries of the cities.
This is
now keep in mind
Reconstruction.
That we're doing this. What's that?
This Reconstruction. Okay,
yeah.
Industrializing
keep
the
in
South.
mind, during the midst of all of this, Black people weren't paid.
Right.
So So this is kind of where the idea of reparations for Black Americans, or you can argue really Black people in the West, comes in, because, they transitioned from working in the fields to working in the factories without pay.
Pretty quickly.
So, right.
Yeah.
Freed and enslaved Black artisans and hired out, in parentheses, workers, all took part in some sort of quasi-proletarianization. The process would be a factor in the doubling of the industrial output of the South by the mid-19th century. But the urbanization of the South also brought increasing fears of revolt and required changes in the apparatus of repression. So, again, fear that the poors, or in this case, the Blacks, or the ninjas, would rise up. So, again, revolts of the enslaved, from the Stono Rebellion to the German Coast Uprising to Gabriel Prosser's rebellion to the Nat Turner Revolt, struck fear into the hearts of the slave-owning ruling class, and, as resistance from below became even more difficult to manage, the slave autocracy opted for more professionalized and reliable ways of containing it. There was great anxiety about the events in Jamaica, where in 1739, fugitive Maroon communities in the mountains united and fought a guerrilla war with the British to a standstill, winning the Maroons limited autonomy. But few things haunted the enslavers more than the example set by the Haitian Revolution, which began in 1791 and culminated in the liberation of the island's Black population, giving enslaved people in the United States more confidence in rebellions. In 1796, a number of Black citizens of Charleston were executed for a large-scale plot to burn the city to the ground. They were described as having intended to make a St. Domingo business out of it. St. Domingo was the name used for Haiti at the time. Fear sparked by the success of the Haitian Revolution provoked ports from Charleston to Boston to ban, and in some places deport, Black people originating from the Caribbean.
Sound familiar.
Social controls like curfews and restrictions on movement targeted Black folks, free as well as the enslaved, but these were difficult to enforce with ad hoc bands of vigilantes. Gee, you can fast forward to 2025, not much has changed.
Tale as old as time.
While the enslavement class relied upon the cities, they also strove to keep the social space of the labor camp and the city separate, fearing that the field workers would be ruined by exposure to the cosmopolitan interconnections, a propensity to revolt of the free, Black, and proletarianized enslaved workers of the city.
That's still a thing.
Right.
That's fucking country boys, bro. Those city boys can't do baby, shut up. Like, still the same shit. Like, that's those liberal college kids and their whatever.
The hiring out system expanded the already existing networks of communication and connection between the rural and the urban. Moreover, the various legal restrictions proved unable to regulate city workers to the point where neither owners nor mutual officers could effectively monitor the enslaved bricklayers, carpenters, painters, and other craft workers who traveled freely around the city and surrounding countryside. It was from these craft workers that many of the ranks and leaders of major attempted revolts emerged, such as Gabriel Prosser, a blacksmith, or Denmark Vesey, a carpenter.
Which coincides to a lot of the labor violence that happened at the same time, too, I'm betting.
Correct.
Like...
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was like Carnegie. I'm trying to think of the era. We're in 1820s, right? So, like, Carnegie hasn't made it there yet, but we're still talking about railroad barons and shit. So,
right.
The
right-wing class in Charleston, South Carolina, a city that was 60% Black in 1820, acted on its anxieties with a more intensive and professionalized watch system than other contemporary cities in the form of the City Watch and Guard. This was especially the case on Sundays, market days, when movement and interaction were freer among both the slave and free Black majority population. It was on these days that, similar to Barbados, day patrols of musket-armed and blue uniformed squads would observe and suppress indecent or riotous behavior at the markets. In the time before the invention of the modern police, it was no coincidence that Charleston, as David Whitehouse points out, was the most heavily policed major city in the U.S. and also the only one where the majority of the people were enslaved.
Now, what's the major police city in the U.S.? In the D.C.? Like, okay.
Then, in 1822, a planned insurrection in Charleston was uncovered that confirmed the worst fears of the white slave-owning class. The conspiracy consisted of an extensive network in both the city and labor camps, where a plan to assassinate key officials, loot weapon depots, kill as many whites as possible, set fire to the city, and either escape on boats to Haiti, where revolt leader Denmark Vesey reportedly had contacts, or establish an armed outpost of freedom. Although the plan was aborted before attempted, and 35 people were hanged in response, the planned insurrection reflected the explosive potential of Black rebellion and the challenges of the city. In 1822, in direct response to the thwarting of the planned slave insurrection of Denmark Vesey and his comrades, a daytime patrol was created. By 1856, this patrol had become fully incorporated into a modern uniformed police force. The escalation in repression required the creation of a new organization with more permanent and centralized authority than the slave patrols. A Charlestonian enslaver of 1845 describes the change in a perversively matter-of-fact way. In the rural setting, the mere occasional riding about and general supervision of a patrol may be sufficient, but some more energetic and scrutinizing system is absolutely necessary in cities where, from the very denseness of population and closely contiguous settlements, there must be in need of closer and more careful circumspection.
Do you remember last week we talked about urbanization and how like police are super worried about that, which is why you see like cop cities have urban environments and all this stuff, but it was just like the use of the National Guard in that, all that shit.
Right.
You know, that this was a problem back then that they realized, like, oh, cities are a problem, you know?
Right.
Like,
but it also makes sense because, like I talked to you about this last night, I saw this on Twitter, you know, like I live in DC, you know, my neighborhood is gentrified, but heavily populated by a Latino presence. And to this day, you know, even a couple of days ago, I believe there was an ICE raid like 4 blocks away from my house. Like, so they're practically been swarming my neighborhood for the last 2 or 3 weeks. You know? So, but it's the idea of like, this is why you're not going to see the police in like less populated or more
like they're not out here near me. Where like the population is super small, they're not worried about us, you know.
Right, which will go into something that I'll definitely will talk about in an interaction that I had online with a community organizer in Chicago. We'll get more into that later, but it's the idea of like, you know, especially now with Muriel Bowser, my mayor, basically welcoming the police state. You know, like, thank you, Trump, for bringing in the police state. Now, some people are arguing she's trying to play 4D chess. I'm arguing like you're just kind of letting in you're just kind of opening the Pandora's box in terms of, and we'll get into this in the next segment, of, you know, the surveillance state is the evolution of what we're seeing now, into what we're reading about right now. So you're trying to bring that in, you're welcoming the police, and they're going to bring this surveillance bullshit, especially with the AI, that is being implemented in many places in Minnesota. Again, we'll get into that later. That is basically Big Brother watching you every moment. So, you know, by you acknowledging or even thanking government for essentially welcoming the police state in your city or town, whatever, this is what implicitly you're also bringing in.
Hope
And
that bootloader
who's that
tastes
going to
good.
affect the most? Who's that going to affect the most? People of color. So, but like I said, we'll get more into that later on in the show. But anyway, while it is somewhat simplistic to see the slave patrol as simply turning into the modern police via linear progression, there is an unbroken blue line in the history of the U.S. South, from the experiments of the slave patrol to the formation of the modern police, as the private violence of the labor camp was moved into the public city.
Yep.
2 years before the Denmark-Vesey conspiracy, on August 16, 1819, in Manchester, England's industrial center, 100,000 workers marched in organized columns onto St. Peter's Field as part of a demonstration for suffrage and for lowering of food prices. This was the culmination of a years-long process of organizing and politicization in which the working class progressed from hunger marches to strikes, to a general union expressly forbidden by law, to political organizations fighting for radical democracy. The same year witnessed illegal unions parading in the streets, while state attempts to arrest the reformers proved inadequate when juries refused to find them guilty. Here, arrayed on St. Peter's Field, King Mob now appeared as a disciplined army. The volunteer yeomanry militia was sent in first to disperse the protests and arrest one of the leaders, Henry Hunt. The yeomanry was comprised of volunteers drawn from bosses and shop owners, the equivalent of the city's business mafia, and thus its members were recognizably from the same class responsible for abuses, hoarding of grain, and driving up of prices, the very target of the workers' anger. Workers fought to stop the raid and the arrest of Hunt, carrying out a de-arrest, to use contemporary parlance. In response, the waiting English military charged the crowd and committed what became to be known as the Peterloo Massacre, in which 11 were killed and 400 injured. This act of brutal repression had the opposite effect to quelling the protests. Several nights of rioting and unrest in Manchester and surrounding towns followed. A military occupation was required to quell the resistance. This bloody event created scores of working-class martyrs and provoked an uproar and radicalization. Some sections of the movement began amassing arms in defense, training for military action, and spreading calls for revenge for Peterloo. The radical wing of the workers' movement began agitating for an insurrection against the government to occur in November 1819. Reform cannot be achieved without bloodshed, one radical publication proclaimed. Although the more conservative leadership called off the armed rising, the political mood can be seen in the report of a police informant who attended a delegate meeting representing 12,500 workers. The spy stated that workers had begun arming themselves to prepare, and that there was much regret on the part of many that the insurrection had been called off. One speaker rallied, "If we had met all over England on that day, the business would have been done before now." An 1820 editorial in the London Times lamented, "Radicalism is every day most alarmingly and portentously increasing, and will, we predict, more and more, till, without change, end is certain." A relatively new urban ruling class was frightened and still determining how to control the emergence of the powerful new working class. For the ruling classes, this problem was ultimately solved via the modern police force. Of course, organized repression and violence have been used by the ruling class for as long as there have been class divisions. But modern policing is a very specific kind of repressive institution with a number of historically unique features. Some histories simplify the process of emergence and present it as it proceeding from either London or the slave patrols directly to the modern police. A closer reading of history reveals that modern cops came about as preferred tool through a process of ruling class experimentation rooted in different repressive precursors and different institutional inertias, but nonetheless a conscientious process of mutual borrowing and shared experiences. So,
Hey, you put
already
this
read
in.
that. So before we get to Malcolm, so we talked about this. Actually, we've had this discussion for the last 2 years. Like I've been home, like the last 2 summers, mostly I've been home, like traveling a little bit, but mostly working with you, on the show. You've brought up the idea of kickboxing to me frequently
Grappling,
over the last 2 years.
kickboxing, all that stuff.
And and I would listen to you, but not necessarily thinking about
Like,
it.
whatever. I get it.
Basically.
I'm with you. I'm a hyper nerd about it.
It's
I understand.
But it's funny, like when I was in London a couple of months ago talking to my sister, I subconsciously said to her, like by next summer, I'm thinking maybe I'll take up kickboxing. And reflecting on that, obviously, I think it might obviously coming from you. But I think in thinking about, and we've kind of had these discussions a little bit, we don't necessarily talk, like, I'll put it this way. We talk about revolution in the space almost like in a way we talk about a love story in a novel. Like, it's just this nebulous thing that if people come together and we have the right ideas and we fight, we don't go into specifics, but somehow if we come together under like a policy or whatever, and we just challenge the establishment, that the establishment will cave, we get what we want, and
fight
we live
the power
happily ever after. Right, exactly. But
none of you motherfuckers know how to fight. Like,
right, but we never talk about the struggle or what that takes in order for a revolution to occur. And we've done many segments in terms of what people had to fight for and literally lost their lives in order to have the revolution that they wanted come to pass. And I don't think we talk about that enough or seriously is the idea. And we said this on the show, like, and I mentioned even like with what my father said to me just a couple months ago, there's bloodshed involved in revolution. So I'm not saying that you are going to die necessarily, but what are you willing to give up in order to have that revolution? But a part of that, as we've read in the article and what we've mentioned in several segments, is the idea of defending yourself, or the idea of being able to defend your neighbor when that event ever comes.
Yeah.
And we talked to, we played a clip of Malcolm Jamal Warner saying last week, and actually that clip is going to go up tomorrow, of how we're too comfortable for revolution. I think now, in kind of thinking about this, what he meant by comfortable, he meant lazy, because I don't think we're willing to put in the work now. And I'll get more to why I don't think
it's also the mindset. Like
it's a mindset. Yeah. It's a mindset, but I think this is where capitalism kind of comes into play, because
it forces you to focus on survival.
We talk about both of us talk about working out.
Yeah.
Off camera or even on camera. But for me, I have a personal trainer. I'm actually switching personal trainers probably within the next month. I have to pay for a gym membership.
Shit costs money, don't it?
I have to try and eat right. I have to eat properly, and even now that's getting expensive. And I have to put in time in order to get myself to where
I've got a home gym. Some of you have seen my home gym online. You can count the dollars in that if you know what's up. A lot of money, but I guarantee you, anyone who wants to come use it, go ahead. You're welcome to. Be safe.
Right, but that's the thing. Like, capitalism, unfortunately, especially among the working class, has made it so that We're thinking about our kids. We're thinking about our bills. We're thinking about how we're going to get food on the table.
Yep.
We're thinking about how we're going to get to work. We're thinking about how to take care of our families. We're thinking about how we're going to take care of our basic needs. It's not to say that we're lazy, although I think it's part of it, but we're so distracted by the day to day because we are so squeezed because we're not getting very much relatively from the powers that be, that we're too distracted to think about revolution or anything of the sort, or to take care of ourselves in order to prepare ourselves. I was watching a podcast, not a podcast, of a fitness influencer over the weekend. And he mentioned something that I think was very interesting. He said, obviously with fitness, as I mentioned, there's time involved, there's sacrifices involved. But he made a point, like, when during the pandemic, when food, even back then, 2020, food was cheaper then, but it was still expensive, and we were home, many of us, we were bored, many of us, bread was kind of expensive, but or you couldn't get any bread at that point, what were people during that time when they had a little bit more money and extra time, what were they doing? They were making sourdough bread. Somehow people, when they had time and energy and the boredom caused them to think of the possibilities that they can do, everybody and their mother was making sourdough bread for like that year. I wasn't, but some of you were. But it just kind of shows the idea of, like, if you're given a little bit of money, if you have a little bit of time, and you have the imagination to think beyond your circumstance, then you can do more of yourself. You can actually take care of yourself.
Yeah.
That you can actually make moves. And I think that right now, that's what the establishment is scared of. That's probably why, in my opinion, they're not giving you as much money. They're not giving you as much time, because they don't want you to think of the possibility of what can happen if things were truly liberated for you. So they need to keep you in a space where you're going to be so distracted of not paying you well enough, not working you to the bone, and making you so distracted that you can barely think about how I'm going to get through the next hour, more or less the next week or month or year, that you're not thinking in terms of organizing, or even yet, and we've had this discussion, like, if the revolution is going to come, how are you going to fucking defend yourself? Like, and I want to preface by saying that doesn't mean to buy a gun, because some of you don't need that kind of power.
Yeah.
But it could mean,
plus,
like,
these things don't save you. Like, a lot of other shit. You need a lot more shit on top of that. Like,
what are you preparing?
What do you mean
for that? Just
I've just got it fucking down here all the time. You know what I mean? So,
right. But even with that, like, I was watching another podcast maybe last week with two women, and one of the women said that a former boyfriend of hers, like, had her learn to, take her to the gun range or whatever, and he basically told her, like, if you ever have to pick up a gun, you're using it. Yep. Meaning, one, it's a last resort, and if you pick it up, you have the intent. You have the intention to.
Yeah, they're not just intimidation tools. Like,
no,
I've seen that go wrong 1,000 times.
Right.
I just learn how to fight first and foremost, if you can and are able. I think about this. We've talked about this too, where it's just like, we just got to start thinking tactically, like, because look, the powers that be can escalate about 80 times more violently than you can, right? That doesn't mean you aren't prepared for the level of violence they're going to bring. You definitely should. But, like, there's a lot of stuff that back then you could get away with. Now, the ways you can organize and the ways you can do stuff, they aren't letting you do anymore. So
well,
you're
you
going to
can
have to
argue
find
even
ways
in the
around
60s
that.
Well, even back in the civil rights movement, there was infiltration. Now,
Oh,
granted,
for sure.
You know, it's definitely gotten a lot more sophisticated now.
Yeah.
Again, we're going to talk about that a little bit. Well, we've talked about it before, but we're going to talk about it in my next segment later in the show.
Yeah.
Just to give you an example of that. But, you know, I think, but I still think, well, that, I mean, you've kind of mentioned this, that any talks of revolution or anything of organizing should not be done online, bare minimum, because you don't want the surveillance state to even know about it. And this is the thing that we see in history, as you've also said, like a resurrection will pop off at any second.
Yeah.
So it was the idea back then of like, stay ready, you know? So that's what I mean in terms of taking care of yourself, you know, doing the very things like that you need to do, like, or even for me, as I said, like, even if you working out to run away from the cops,
right?
You know, that's a form of resistance.
And like,
you know, like
compliant resistance, that's a thing too. Like keeping yourself safe if cops grab you, like plenty of stuff that is just survival.
Right. I showed footage of me when I ran into that ice raid. What were people doing? Yelling, screaming, videoing the ICE agents, basically saying, get the fuck out.
Well, an anti-riot tactics is a thing you should be looking up as well, right? How are you going to deal with tear gas when it's thrown at you? How are you going to deal with shield walls of cops? How are you going to deal with kettling? How are you going to deal with... There's ways. People are inventive, but that needs to be figured out now. And you need to have that knowledge now. So,
but I think it's a lot easier to have these conversations now with Trump.
Yeah.
But I think the challenge is, as I said, stay ready. You know, even under a Democratic governor or mayor or president, you still need to have these, like, you know, these tactics in play, because in the event that something pops off, regardless of whoever is in charge, you need to be ready. And I think, and I honestly don't think even in this space we talk about that enough or well enough for people to have that idea of like, oh, I need to do this other bit in terms of my body right, my mind right. So, and it's not just about like mental health. Well, it's part of it, but it's the idea of like, what are you going to do in the event, like if something like that happens to you, how are you going to respond? Or if you catch someone trying to infiltrate like a neighbor or something, what are you going to do in order to help your neighbor? You know, like we need to be looking out for each other in that way and for ourselves. And I think we need to figure out what kind of time and commitment that we need to do in order to ensure our livelihoods here. Because especially if we're going to talk about revolution, like, again, our government leaders have several steps ahead of us because they militarize the police, and we are so distracted and we're lazy in terms of our physical and mental state that they will knock us out in a second. So we need to start thinking a little bit beyond of what they are.
Yeah.
And I think someone in the chat said, we need to have these conversations offline.
And know your enemy too, by the way. Like, you're not going to be able to beat them if you don't know the tactics they're taught. Go look up warrior training for cops. Go look up their riot control stuff. Like, that information's out there, you know? You can freely find it. So please go do that. But
we've talked about, I think this is definitely, we talked about doing this or talking more about like resistance in terms of like you know, whether it is like kickboxing or like, you know, whatever. We talked about doing that. segment, but like obviously we don't want to do it half-ass. Like I think there's definitely like a lane where we're kind of educating our audiences, or at least sharing the information that we get in terms of how to protect yourself, how to ensure your safety and the safety of others in the event. And I think especially right now, I think it's definitely more pertinent. But again, the idea is staying ready, because you never know when, if and when the revolution ever arises in this country. And as I said, I don't believe this revolution is ever going to come anytime soon. That being said, I think to have that kind of insurance of being ready if that time ever comes, I think is very important. And I think it's something that,
especially when you want to think about, like, not everyone will be. And if you're wanting to be, you know, like, not everyone's capable either. And it's going to be your responsibility to help those.
Well,
you know?
Well, even with that, and again, I want to preface, it doesn't always mean like physical violence or physical assault or whatever you want to call it. It could be, you know, like medics, like learning basic first aid. It could be being a citizen journalist. Like your phone is a powerful weapon these days.
Absolutely.
As, you know, so we need people of different walks of life doing different things within the resistance. So, you know, mutual aid, it's definitely a part of that. But I think we kind of limit ourselves to thinking just that in terms of resistance. Like, there's a lot more nuance to resistance than just mutual aid. So, again, not to knock on our colleagues who are promoting that, but we also need to think of the other avenues that we need in order to protect ourselves and each other, which can include and should include perhaps arming yourself or taking care of yourself in terms of some type of martial art or something of that vein in order for you to truly resist, you know, the armed forces if you get to that. So going off of that, let's watch this clip from Malcolm to end this, where he talks about self-defense and gun rights during the civil rights movement. So go ahead, you can play the clip.
You have called for self-defense units, rifle clubs, ready to execute on the spot those who threaten Negroes.
I don't think that I said that.
Yes, you did.
No, I don't think I said that.
All right.
I have called for rifle clubs, that I think Negroes should, in areas where the police, whether it be federal, state, or city, have proven their inability or their unwillingness to defend Negroes, the lives and the property of Negroes, then it's only intelligent and it's only right that Negroes protect themselves, and I have encouraged them to buy a rifle and a shotgun, which according to the Constitution is legal.
For what purpose?
Not buy a pistol or something like that, but a rifle or a shotgun, which is constitutionally legal.
For what purpose?
So that at any time, anyone makes any effort whatsoever to brutalize them or attack them or endanger them, they should have something to defend themselves. And in a country that spends, I think, $50 billion a year for defense alone, I'm shocked that there's apprehension over Negroes trying to do something to defend themselves.
Well, who will determine when the Negro is endangered?
I think that if the government is
the person himself,
instead of being so worried about what the Negro is going to do, the government should stop dragging its feet and take the initiative necessary to eliminate the injustices that frustrate Negroes and drive them into a method of defense such as this.
You've said, Minister Malcolm, you have to expect the Negroes to rise up sooner or later.
Oh, yes.
What does that mean?
Well, just the same thing that it meant in South Vietnam and these other places where you find oppressed people. Sooner or later, they rise up against the oppressor. When the Jews were being brutalized in Poland, there came a time when they couldn't take it anymore, and they fought back. They didn't have too much to fight with, but they fought back. And I think every oppressed people, no matter how meek and humble they are, after you drive them so far, they're going to strike back.
Right.
Yep.
I think you brought up a good point that the government doesn't have to worry about uprisings if they did what they
if they dealt with a fucking problem, the underlying issues, but they never do.
Right. So it's like we spend over $1 trillion in defense. So, just given our capability of defense, I mean, what is that kind of teaching the populace? Like, we need to defend ourselves too. But somehow that's a problem for them when we want to do it, protect ourselves from them, So, but you can also make that connection to any oppressed groups, especially right now, what's happening in Gaza, like, and in their way, and we've talked about this in many ways, like the art of cooking has been resistance. The art of art has been resistance for them. The art of trying to report on something and then tweeting it out has been an act of resistance. So again, Malcolm was talking about in terms of arming yourself. I think you can look into that now with a lot more nuance than that. It can include that, but it doesn't mean the all end all. There are other ways of showing your resistance that doesn't necessarily involve, but we need to be aware of all of these avenues in order to protect ourselves better. But yeah, I think this is definitely worth a lane that we can kind of explore a little bit, just to inform our audience a little bit more. And let us know if you're in the chat or if you watch this as a clip, let us know what you think. Do you think it's necessary for you and others like you to be prepared to defend yourself in case the revolution ever comes and you'll be in the position not only to defend yourself, but maybe to defend or protect other people? And what would that look like for you? Like, again, doesn't have to be an armed weapon, but what other avenues do you think that you're gifted in that you want to be able to assist in the resistance in some way? Let us know in the chat or let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe, and please share to fight the suppression, because I'm sure YouTube is going to suppress this out of all hell, given that we're talking about this issue. And help us get to 3K. We're almost there. I think we're over 2,500 right now. We're trying to get to 3K by the end of the year, if not sooner.
Yep.
And thanks for watching.
Nope. Julio. Yep. For those able, I definitely suggest the wrestling and the Muay Thai. Very good things to go do. Vicky said she was picking what grapes? What kind of grapes, Vicky, were you picking? What kind? I would like to know. Please tell me. Sean the Cordlord said urban warfare. 100 points. Leave your phones at home when discussing anything truly revolutionary.
Yep. Just that. This is just my soapbox. You don't have to post everything online, people. Like, other than me telling you guys that I was going to London, I did not post at all that I was away online,
Right.
maybe until after the fact.
Yeah.
You all don't need to know. You all don't need to know my whereabouts everywhere. Okay. Certain things you should keep to yourself. So you don't need to know what y'all eating. You don't need to know where y'all try, especially now. And especially for me, like, I don't want to necessarily have a paper trail of people knowing my whereabouts in case some people may want to pick me up at some point. So, like, yeah, just be a little bit more guarded of what you post online, please. Just saying, not everybody needs to know your business. But then again, I'm sort of a private person anyway, so that's not necessarily a hard thing for me to do. But I think for me, especially being a teacher too, like, I'm kind of conscious of that somewhat. So, but more importantly, like, I just don't like the idea of people knowing. I'm so kind of cagey about that. Like, if I ever say that I'm going on vacation, so I post it online, like, what if someone knows where I live? They can break into my house. So, like, I think about that shit.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, point being, don't put all your business online. Not everybody needs to know your whole life story. keep some of it to yourself.
Yep. Driving me Macy, the town that I live has a lot of bad history when it comes to racial tension and some filming locations in the movie In the Heat of the Night. At the time they were trying to film, they had got ran off and had to use other locations for some of the footage. The mentality of the people hasn't changed much. So, yep. What else we got?
Sean said, damn, it seems only when people die / get hurt is when people fully stand up. Yeah. And so this is why, as we said earlier, like, physically, mentally prepare yourself, whatever that means. You know, try and find a time in your mind and your body and your schedule to make that time to be able to, you know, obviously we do not want people to get hurt or get unalived or whatever out there. But, you know, like, do what you need to do to give you the best chance of success.
Right.
So I think ultimately that's all we're saying is, you know, we don't want to be sitting ducks out there in the event of something happening like that happening to you all or us.
Sean the Accord Lord, I have no clue how anyone can understand this was our past and not think it's our current future. Kieran Pine replies, United States of Amnesia. Pretty much.
Well, I wouldn't call it amnesia, I just call it ignorance in a lot of ways, because I think, again, this is kind of like the hidden history that we don't necessarily talk about. Like I said earlier, the idea, like, you know, was like these rebellions, we think of them as just like white people or maybe even like black people, like slaves. But we forget in the cities, especially in the beginning of the American Revolution, there were certain slaves who were free and coalescing in a city where they all were gathering in ghettos in the same places. They were going to find common ground on some way, shape, or form. So that should, if anything, that should be an encouragement to you all. Like, if that was possible then, it should be way more possible now, given social media. But mainstream media will make you think, and our politicians will make you think that these issues are just very singular in terms of maybe racial groups or gender or, you know, sexual orientation or whatever else, when really a lot of these issues, they're kind of intertwined with one another among different populations. It's just the idea of trying to make sense of all of that to kind of see who the real enemy is. And it's not each other. But then again, you guys already know that.
Yep. But yeah, I mean, plus there's a load of stuff, like mainly we're asking you to just look at what resources you have to exploit against the system, you know, like whether that's physical ableness or some form of land, you know, like any of those things, growing your own food, all that jazz. You know, that's going to be needed at some point.
Yeah.
But anyway, you ready to get to our next one?
Yes.
Cool. Well, we haven't talked much about this recently. Talked plenty about South America in general, but recently the, you know, administration in power is turning their eyes on Venezuela, right? They've got bones to pick when the people actually chose who they chose. So we'll get into it. But I brought this, right, because I wanted to start people with a little bit of like refresher, a little history lesson, right? So this is from The Dissidents, who writes, Trump is continuing the long-standing U.S. regime change policy in Venezuela. So here, we'll start here. Here's Fee, right? One thing some of us have been pointing out endlessly, when Trump comes in, war will likely quell in Ukraine and ignite in West Asia and Latin America. Even events in Syria point to this, and well, look for Venezuela to be among the hotspots for regime change as it was before. as well as the Caribbean, which we've talked about, right? Here they're putting troops in Trinidad and Tobago, right? So, they're trying to pressure South America in general. I wonder why. It couldn't be trying to find economies elsewhere. It couldn't be that. But continuing longstanding U.S. policy, Trump is ramping up the regime change war in Venezuela. He has recently built up naval forces in the southern Caribbean in a move that Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro believes is an attempt to invade his country and overthrow his government. Responding to the Trump ramp-up, Maduro said, "In the face of this maximum military pressure, we have declared maximum preparedness for the defense of Venezuela." Sounds like they've been listening to us, Care Bear. Get prepared.
Yeah.
Is the Trump admin planning on invading Venezuela for another regime change war? If so, it could only be an escalation of long-standing policy in Venezuela since the election of Hugo Chavez in 1999. In this article, I will go over the history of the regime change in Venezuela, which has led up to the current apparent escalation. So, a lot of you have these shirts, but we're going to find out what he actually did when socialist Hugo Chavez was elected president of Venezuela in 1999. The CIA and American deep state were hell-bent on overthrowing the government, upset that his socialist policies would restrict U.S. access to Venezuela's resources, most notably its oil. Since his election, the U.S. government funneled money through IRI, International Republican Institute, a subsidiary of the NED, the National Endowment for Democracy, a cutout of the CIA's regime change arm, into the Venezuelan opposition. As Mother Jones reported at the time, IRI's Latin American program was led by Georges Foriol, who had previously worked at a conservative Washington think tank alongside Otto Reich, who had been Bush's closest advisor on Latin America. Reich, who, according to Congress's Government Accountability Office, conducted prohibited covert propaganda on behalf of the Nicaraguan Contras in the 1980s, is a former ambassador to Venezuela who would frequently denounce Chavez. So this is like Oliver North stuff at some point. Mother Jones noted IRI staffed its program with Bush allies and campaign supporters in turn. In 2001, the administration increased funding for IRI's activities in Venezuela sixfold, from $50,000 to $300,000, the largest grant any of NED's democracy promotion organizations received that year. The outlet also noted IRI staffers spent much of their time cultivating the opposition. IRI worked closely with Acción Democrática, a group that IRI's own documents acknowledged, refused to recognize the legitimacy of the Chavez presidency. Sound familiar? IRI also tutored opposition figures, including Caracas Mayor Alfredo Pina, an outspoken Chavez critic, on how to create a political party, and that IRI also used its own money to bring opposition figures to Washington, where they met with top U.S. officials. Eventually, this led to a coup against Chavez's democratically elected government in 2002. Again, sound familiar? As Mother Jones wrote, in April 2002, a group of military officers launched a coup against Chavez, and leaders of several parties trained by IRI joined the junta. When news of the coup emerged, democracy promotion groups in Venezuela were holding a meeting to discuss ways of working together to avoid political violence. IRI representatives didn't attend, saying that they were drafting a statement on Chavez's overthrow. On April 12th, the Institute's Venezuela office released a statement praising the bravery of the junta and commending the patriotism of the Venezuelan military. Similar to the Maidan coup in Ukraine in 2014, the U.S.-backed coup was justified using a false flag massacre, done by the U.S.-funded opposition that was falsely blamed on Chavez's forces. As Counterpunch reported on April 11, 2002, the Venezuelan opposition activated snipers who fired on a largely pro-Chavez crowd that had gathered near Miraflores Palace to defend the president from the threat of an approaching and aggressive opposition march. Film footage from the ensuing gun battle was inserted into a prefabricated media strategy which sought to convince the Venezuelan population that government supporters were responsible for their deaths, and that they had acted directly on the orders of Chavez himself. Soon after, Chavez was reinstated into power when his supporters took to the streets and demanded a reversal of the U.S. coup. Again, sound familiar? Seems like this happened recently in like 8 places. But the U.S. regime change attempts and political interference in Venezuela did not end there. As Foreign Policy magazine reported, Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez frequently and famously accused the United States of covertly trying to overthrow him, but only after his death did evidence emerge to support his seemingly paranoid claims. The magazine wrote, a WikiLeaks cable released in 2013 outlined the U.S. strategy for undermining Chavez's government by penetrating Chavez's political base, dividing Chavismo and isolating Chavez internationally. The strategy was to be carried out by USAID's Office of Transition Initiatives and involved funding opposition organizations in Venezuela. After Chavez's death in 2013, the regime change policy continued against his successor Nicolas Maduro, the current leader of Venezuela. In 2015, U.S. interference successfully swung the Venezuelan National Assembly to the U.S.-backed opposition for the first time since Chavez's victory. As Jacobin magazine reported, beginning in October 2013, the National Endowment for Democracy, a government agency created by the Reagan administration, provided nearly $300,000 for the National Democratic Institute for a program titled Venezuela: Improve Training and Communication Skills for Political Activists. Man, I feel like a lot of people would think that course was good for them now these days. So why does it do this? Hold on, I fix these. Puppers, you're going to have to wait. Puppers. Always trying to steal the show. Hold on. Let's go back. Wait, almost there. I just had to find what slide I was on. Which I could do this way, right? 43. Hold on. 2, 1. So, the magazine noted that the program bragged that the NED mobilized a voter database that identified and targeted swing voters through social media, and that indeed, in December 2015, the opposition was a majority in the Venezuela National Assembly for the first time since Chavez came to power in 1999. Jacobin noted that the NDI claims credit for the opposition's success, writing that this strategy ultimately played an important role in their resounding victory in the 2015 election, and that the determining factor in the success of the coalition in the parliamentary elections of 2015 was a 2-year effort prior to the elections to raise awareness, train and align national and regional structures of communication of all the parties that conform the MUD, Mesa de la Unidad Democrática, the U.S.-funded opposition party, right? So similar to what they were doing in Russia, right? Same time. So, but since 2015, the U.S. has also funded a series of violent riots in Venezuela. The NED spent $3.7 million on program for the promotion of democratic ideas and values in South America between 2016 and 2017, much of which went to supporting the violent Garimbas riots in Venezuela in 2017. While the riots were portrayed as peaceful in the U.S. media, journalist Abby Martin reported on them on the ground and found this was far from the case. Martin noted that out of 84 deaths, the majority, at least 61 deaths, were caused by the U.S.-backed violent rioters. Martin reported that factories, public transportation, Socialist Party offices, hospitals, and clinics were all attacked by the U.S.-backed riots, along with the childhood home of Chavez, the government's housing agency, a maternity clinic, a cultural center, which gave free music lessons to youth and food distribution centers. Eventually, in 2019, Donald Trump recognized Juan Guaido, an unelected American public puppet with no political power, as the official president of Venezuela. Between 2018 and 2020, the United States funneled $1 billion to Juan Guaido's fake interim government. Guaido and his supporters used the U.S. funding and recognition to repeatedly attempt to violently overthrow the actual Venezuelan government led by Maduro, including with a failed military coup in 2019. In 2020, Guaido even stormed Venezuela's National Assembly after declaring himself president despite not being elected. U.S. Senator Chris Murphy later admitted that we tried to sort of construct a kind of coup in Venezuela, and that we thought that getting Guaido to declare himself president would be enough to topple the regime. Kind of saying the quiet part out loud, aren't you? Anyway, the U.S. government even attempted to funnel arms to the Venezuelan opposition disguised as humanitarian aid packages through U.S. aid. John Bolton, then Trump's national security advisor, later admitted that this coup attempt was done to take Venezuelan oil, saying, if we could have American oil companies really invest in and produce the oil capabilities in Venezuela, it would be good for the people of Venezuela and it would be good for the people of the United States. We both have a lot of a stake here, making this come out the right way. Trump, on the campaign trail in 2024, also admitted this, saying, when I left Venezuela, was ready to collapse. We could have taken it over. We could have gotten all that oil. It would have been right next door. So, again, quiet part out loud. The endless coups and political interference have not only been the only aspect of the United States regime change strategy in Venezuela. Along with coup attempts, the United States has increasingly placed barbaric sanctions on Venezuela that deprive the population of basic needs in hopes that it will lead them to overthrow the government. The harshest U.S. sanctions on Venezuela from 2017 to 2019 killed at least 40,000 people, according to a study from economists Jeffrey Sachs and Mark Weisbrot. Overall, the sanctions caused over 100,000 deaths in the country, according to research from Alfred de Zayas, an expert formerly from the UN Human Rights Council. Francesco Rodriguez, a Venezuelan opposition economist, put out a detailed study which found that every time Venezuelan oil production, the country's main export and source of revenue, began to recover, U.S. sanctions caused it to crash again. He noted that experts predicted that Venezuelan oil production was expected to recover by 2017 had it not been for the U.S. sanctions. Writing oil industry analysts were predicting a stabilization of Venezuelan oil output, and economic analysts were predicting modest economic growth fueled by the recovery of oil prices as late as mid-2017. The severe decline in oil productions was completely unforeseen, even by the forecast models that took full account of the well-known decline in investment at the time. He noted that economic sanctions and other actions of economic statecraft aimed at the Venezuelan government has strongly impacted the country's economic and humanitarian conditions, and that it is hard to deny that they have a sizable negative impact on living conditions in the country. Another detailed report from the UN-sanctioned expert Alina Duhan wrote that because of economic sanctions on Venezuela, electricity lines are able to work at less than 20% of their capacity. An estimated 90% of households are connected to the national water distribution system. Numerous households, however, report frequent cuts because of electricity outages affecting water pumps and the maintenance of infrastructure, and because of the shortage of qualified maintenance staff. Impediments to food imports, constituting more than 50% of food consumption, have resulted in the steady growth of malnourishment in the past 6 years, with more than 2.5 million people being severely food insecure. Venezuela has been almost entirely dependent on medicine imported from abroad, while the majority of public medical services were provided by the state free of charge before 2016. Impediments to healthcare included a lack of severe insufficiency of medicines and vaccines, price growth, electricity shortages to supply equipment, water shortages, and sanitation problems that affect hygiene, decaying infrastructure because of lack of maintenance, the absence of spare parts, the unavailability of new equipment due to the lack of resources, of refusal to sell or deliver, degraded working conditions and a lack of protective equipment against infectious diseases, a loss of staff in all medical areas because of low salaries, and the termination of construction of hospitals and primary healthcare centers. School and university education has faced a serious decrease in government support since 2016, including the termination or reduction of the supply of school uniforms, schools, backpacks, and office supplies, and a reduction of the number of daily meals at school from 2 to 1. the diminution of their quantity and food diversity of their total cancellation. She noted the absence of resources and reluctance of foreign partners, banks, and delivery companies to deal with Venezuelan partners results in the impossibility to buy necessary medical and technological equipment, reagents, and spare parts for the repair and maintenance of electricity, gas, water, public transport, telephone and communication systems, schools, hospitals, houses, and other public institutions, thus undermining the enjoyment of mainly human rights, including the right to a decent life. She concluded that due to the sanctions, low-income people, women, children, and people with special needs or chronic or severe diseases are affected most with regard to the whole scope of human rights, including civil, political, economic, social, and cultural rights, and the right to development. In a recent article for the LA Times, economist Mark Weisbart wrote, in Venezuela, the first year's sanctions under the Trump administration took tens of thousands of lives. Then things got even worse. As the U.S. cut off the country from the international financial system and oil experts froze billions of dollars of assets and imposed secondary sanctions on countries that tried to do business with Venezuela, Venezuela experienced the worst depression without a war in world history. This was from 2012 to 2020, when the economy contracting by 71%, more than 3 times the severity of the Great Depression in the U.S. in the 1930s. Most of this was found to be the result of the sanctions. After years of coup attempts, political interference and crushing sanctions have failed to achieve the United States regime change goal in Venezuela. Seems Trump is now planning on a military invasion to fulfill the long-standing regime change goal. As he bragged on the campaign trail, when I left, Venezuela was ready to collapse. We could have taken it over. We could have gotten all that oil, as I said earlier. So, thoughts, Care Bear, before I get to that. Just to get people all caught up. So, what's your takes?
I think my...
There you go. You there? I hear you. Test.
Yeah.
There you go.
It either might be my internet or Discord. It's kind of.
Yeah, I think it's your internet a bit, but
maybe.
Anyway, what was your takes?
I think it's kind of. Well, I was just basically saying that I think it's kind of interesting that this has gone under the radar.
Right.
Probably not really, but I think just more. More exploitation within the global South and trying to have the West have a means to, I have to remember, but I think Venezuela has a major oil reserve, I guess, if I remember correctly. So it obviously makes sense that us in the West, being as exploitive as we can ever be, has an interest in Venezuela. But yeah, I think, I don't know, it's just more the same.
Yep.
America sees wealth through its resources, through the country's resources, and tries to overstep their bounds in order to take said resources and puts in a puppet figure to essentially do the bidding while giving of being, almost like a savior to a home country. So yeah, again, just more of the same bullshit that we've seen repeatedly on this show for the past few years.
Well, and we've seen it with Israel too, and Gaza, where it's like they have their own reserves. Anywhere where there's some resources we could be taking, like how many times this play out in Africa,
All the time.
But frequently in South America, they like to place the blame on cartels. So, Dave DeCamp, September 2nd, writes, Trump claims U.S. strike on boat near Venezuela targeted the Tren de Aragua gang, Aragua, something like that.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, again, Trump claimed in a post on Truth Social that a U.S. military strike on a boat near Venezuela targeted Tren de Aragua, a Venezuelan gang that Trump admin recently designated as a terrorist organization. How many times are they going to do that shit? How many times? Y'all got to come up with a new thing. It's fucking getting old. So, the post came after Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the U.S. conducted a strike against a boat that had deported Venezuela. Earlier this year, on my orders, U.S. military forces conducted a kinetic strike against positively... the fucking language of this is always shitty, right? Fucking kinetic strike. You mean you fucking blew up some folks. You blew them up. That's what you did. Like, anyway, so Trump posted a video of the strike, his own snuff film, and claimed that it killed 11 terrorists. Though no evidence has been provided to back up these claims. I wonder where they learned that. No U.S. forces were harmed in the strike. Please let this serve as notice to anybody even thinking about bringing drugs into the United States of America, Trump said. Again, we're fucking drug warring it up. Thanks, Reagan. The president also claimed that TDA is operating under the control of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Again, we're tying terrorism to the fucking country's elected leader. But that contradicts a recently declassified U.S. intelligence memo that said it was unlikely that Maduro's government cooperates with or directs TDA. So I bet it's fucking us. Like, I bet it's just us again, you know? Like, funding some fucking group that we then go and fucking blow up later. Like, how many times we do that shit? So, the memo from the Office of the Director of Intelligence said that some members of the Venezuelan government may tolerate or cooperate with TDA, but Maduro and his top officials view the group as a threat. The Maduro regime probably does not have a policy of cooperating with TDA and is not directing TDA movement to and operations in the United States. Pretty simple. Trump said the strike hit the boat while it was operating in international waters. He also claimed that the boat was carrying drugs and headed to the U.S., which contradicts earlier comments from Rubio, who told reporters that the drugs were allegedly carried on the boat were likely headed toward Trinidad and Tobago or some other country in the Caribbean. So a little bit of Rubio saying, well, it's got definitely going to fucking Trinidad. Trump's like, well, they're sending it to America. Well, get your fucking story straight, first of all. Like, Carlos Gimenez claimed in a post on Twitter that the U.S. had sunk a boat belonging to the Cartel of the Suns, a term used to describe a network of Venezuelan government and military officials allegedly involved in drug trafficking, but does not actually exist as an organization. The U.S. has also designated the Cartel of the Suns as a terrorist organization and claims Maduro is its leader, which he and other Latin American leaders deny. The strike on the boat comes after the U.S. has deployed at least 9 warships toward Venezuela, which is seen as a push toward another regime change effort against Maduro. Fucking what? Like, anyway, here's Adam Isakhan. Lethal force against a civilian vessel in international waters is, guess what? A fucking war crime. If not in self-defense, which this video does not show, only non-lethal actions like warner shots or disabling fire are allowed. Being suspected of carrying drugs doesn't carry a death sentence. Like, what's fucking happening? In September 2025, the White House is openly bragging about its extrajudicial bombing of targets not confirmed to have any connection to the Maduro or TDA to manufacture consent for regime change and military actions against a sovereign state, meanwhile, waves arms at Israel. Right there. Anyway, like, so Rubio was a staunch supporter of the first regime change effort when he was a senator, and according to a report from Axios, he is a large driving Trump current Venezuelan policy. Rubio recently announced that the bounty on Maduro's head was increased to $50 million. What? And the Trump administration has designated several cartels, including the so-called Cartel of the Suns, as specially designated global terrorists. Our U.S. official told Axios that the current operation against Venezuela could be Noriega Part 2, referring to the 1989 U.S. invasion of Panama that led to the ouster of Manuel Noriega. Maduro has vowed to fight if the U.S. attacks, warning on Monday that he will declare a republic in arms. So we're going to get to that in just a second, right? But here's what gets posted by Marco Rubio, right? So remember back in 2019 when the first Trump admin tried to do a regime change in Venezuela and Rubio posted this, right? So this is in response, right? People know this guy, old Gaddafi, right? Pretty sure. So yeah. But Fee responds, funny watching some who push Trump now talk about he must pursue peace with Venezuela. Well, of fucking course he won't. Some of us warned about this and never capitulated to the Uniparty. As POTUS, he showed his FP specifically against Venezuelans with Rubio as SOS and Waltz, it may be worse. So here we go. Since his election on November 5th, Donald Trump has begun to announce his team for his second presidential term. Among the secretaries, ambassadors, and advisors, some of the picks have extensive histories with Latin America. That includes his nominee for Secretary of State, Florida Senator Marco Rubio, who is confirmed would be the highest-serving Latino in U.S. history. Trump has not yet made nominations for several top posts relevant for Latin American countries, such as his Treasury Secretary, a position that handles tariff sanctions and economic partnerships. He also has not named who will be Assistant Secretary of State. For the Western Hemisphere, the top U.S. diplomat in Latin America, the pick is rumored to be Carlos Trujillo, former U.S. ambassador to the Organization of American States. So, Fee says, I said what I said. The Trump administration was always going to pivot to West Asia and Latin America. This is why Rubio is part of the administration. He's long had a hard-on for regime change in Caracas via this anti-communist mission led by Moyami Gusanos. So, yep, sounds about right. Right-wing fucking Cubans always doing terrible nonsense. So Maduro says Marco Rubio has Miami-fled U.S. foreign policy toward Latin America, the Caribbean, and Venezuela in the worst way possible. This has always been little Marco's role, and for those who push Trump because Ukraine, you got several more wars in exchange. With Venezuela, I suspect Washington will once again try regime change, but not necessarily as loudly as Trump is making it appear. That's not how we operate. We move in the shadows in covert operations. What you're seeing isn't the entire picture. So, DeCamp mentioned Maduro's statement, right? We're actually going to listen to that statement because we do that sort of thing here. So, I'm going to turn this down because I don't think any of you know Spanish, but
we might have a few people who do.
So, about the head of the United States, the head of war, Marco Rubio, who has assumed presidential functions, and what does he do? He threatens, undoes, and has Miami-fied foreign policy in the worst extremist sense of the United States toward Latin America and the Caribbean. Rest assured, he is not coming for anything good. Rest assured, absolutely sure. And let's wait to see what new nonsense the head of United States government, Marco Rubio, comes up with to talk about and what new war he starts. He is going to Ecuador. He should know that in Ecuador, the government he is going to meet, which has imposed thorough fraud, since 60% of the cocaine produced in Colombia to the United States, to his country. He should know that this president of Ecuador, whom he is going to meet, works with the Albanian mafia and is a head of the drug trafficking mafia. Daniel Noboa is not the only one saying this. The European Union says it. International organizations say it. Daniel Noboa's companies, who comes from a banana exporting family, have been found to be trafficking drugs to Europe. They hide cocaine in the bananas. The certified companies of Daniel Noboa, they don't say that. They keep it quiet. So funny him, fucking president of Ecuador, catching some strays on this one. But thoughts, Care Bear?
I mean, again, what more needs to be said other than
fucking
just a mess.
Same old shit, right?
But I feel like I might disagree with Fee a little bit in terms of her thinking that Trump will kind of keep this
quiet.
Make this, yeah. Trump is not. Trump doesn't do anything. Well, I wouldn't say that. I think anything that Trump feels that he can benefit from, he's going to say it loud and proud. So, but I think especially like if he's able to kind of twist it to terms of, oh, like we're going to stop these cartels from overtaking the country and like possibly the United States of America and preventing all of these immigrants who are trying to get in, then I'm sure he's going to make that a thing. But, you know, I think what he will say loudly is the red meat that his base will kind of lap up, but not necessarily in turn. Well, then again, he's done it before, but I don't think he's going to be that. I don't think it's going to be likely to kind of say the true significance of all this. But who knows? Like, Trump is known to have said things just off the cuff, truthfully, you know, in the media before. So that's possible, but I think what he will say loudly is the bravado of what the base would like him to do, or making the significance of how it connects to us here. But yeah, I guess now thinking about it, that's probably what Fee means in terms of being like the true reason of why. But who knows? Like Trump can just blab it out.
Yeah. So I found this interesting. So this is Combate, right? Who writes 98 million from US aid to the trash can. Reports reveal Guaido received $98 million from USAID to overthrow President Maduro, right? So, and Fee reminding people, and this is why I found it interesting, that much of this aid was done during the Trump's own administration. So when all these people talk about how, like, Trump got rid of U.S. aid, well, maybe rethink some of that thought. In fact, VOA, CIA media, put out Trump tripled aid to Guaido's $52 million, those not asking themselves why Trump and co. woke up and decided to oppose the very agency they've also been using aren't bright. Fee calling y'all dumb. That's what Fee doing. And she right. Y'all were dumb. Not you all. Y'all know who I mean. And I just brought this just to hit a couple of points. Again, Dave DeCamp, September 1st, right? So, according to Newsweek, the U.S. is deploying 9 warships, including 3 guided missile destroyers, 3 amphibious assault ships, and 1 nuclear-powered fast attack sub towards Venezuela. The stated purpose of the deployment is to combat drug cartels, which we know is bullshit, right? So, again, the bounty was increased to $50 million, right? So, Colombian border ordered additional... Maduro's deployed troops to the coast, and the Colombian border ordered additional naval patrols and mobilized a pro-government militia he says has millions of members. If Venezuela is attacked, we will resort to armed struggle to defend our national territory, he said. We would declare ourselves a republic in arms to guarantee our country's peace, sovereignty, and development. Axios reported on Friday that the U.S. is closer to an armed conflict with Venezuela than ever before, and that advisors close to Trump aren't entirely sure whether the gunboat diplomacy is a drug trafficking operation with undertones of regime change or a Caracas coup operation masquerading as drug enforcement. One official claimed it was about drug trafficking, saying the purpose was 105% about narco-terrorism, but if Maduro winds up no longer in power, no one will be crying, says this White House official. Another official had a different view, suggesting it could be Noriega Part 2, referring to the 1989 invasion of Panama. The president asked for a menu of options, and ultimately this is the president's decision about what to do next. But Maduro should be shitting bricks, the official added. A third official said that leaving Maduro in power would be like making Jeffrey Epstein the head of daycare. This is a government official, Collin, of this administration, talking about making Jeffrey Epstein the head of daycare. I thought there was a list y'all were worried about. What happened to that? What happened to that shit? The officials believe an invasion is unlikely, but the Trump administration hasn't ruled it out. Other options include launching airstrikes or missile strikes from warships. The Axios report said that some in Trump's orbit think there is a possibility of launching a drone strike to take out Maduro, though other officials downplayed the idea. The report also said they are hoping Maduro negotiates an exit or members of Venezuelan military assassinate him to collect the U.S. bounty. So, I mean, any closing thoughts? I mean, I feel like we've said everything, but
Venezuela's fucked.
Yep. So
unless they resist, which is very possible in Latin America.
Yep.
So
good luck. I wish you all the luck. Please win. Would be nice. But talking about these things is certainly why YouTube decided we don't deserve any money. So you can say fuck YouTube, get around that system, scan that QR code on your screen, or go to ko-fi.com/Indie News Network. Links to donate are in the description. But if you can't give that because you're one of the poors like ourselves, just like and subscribe, share this. It's one of the best ways you could help, and leave a comment. Supposedly that helps the YouTube algorithm, but otherwise, thanks for watching. Cool. Well, what does the chat have to say? Anything? They got anything to say?
Let's see. Sean says, I'm going backwards, going up. On kick my ass, please, Guido.
Guido. Yeah.
Guido, sorry. Also, Sean, what no one is talking about with the ICE raids is how much value, quote unquote, is also being confiscated. Sure?
Yep. Vicky Adams, I thought Maduro came at POTUS offering $15 million for the Epstein files. And especially with this, what are the officials talking about Epstein too? Like, what are they fucking doing? Like, fucking inmates run the asylum, I swear, dude. What else we got?
Golden Monarch said, speaking of Venezuela, how is its currency doing again? I'm reminded of establishment article said cis Venezuelans discard their own currency. Who in their right minds would ever do that?
Yep. And again, you got to take all that stuff with grains of salt because plenty of narrative management is happening.
Right. Max RJ, all that beautiful oil. Yep.
Well, that beautiful oil. They've got the best oil. So, who was it? Hold on, I just had it.
Yeah.
You know, all this talk of drug enforcement, while Macron, German Chancellor, Hunter Trump, and all the rest in the private jet with the booger sugar. So, like, okay, and I feel you. Kieran Bine, how very dare you, gringo? So yeah, dude, and I apologize for Marco Rubio, as you know, as a Floridian. He is not my governor. I wish we could throw him off the end of the pier that is Florida itself. You know, but whatever. Vicky Adams, yes, Collin, huge oil reserves. Yep.
Yeah. I only know that because Venezuela does trade with Trinidad.
Yep.
Regarding that oil. So
kill your egregores, sanctions, or siege warfare, war crime. I just like, dude, where's the war cops that arrest war crimes? Where are those at? They've been fucking at the donut shop for a little too long, in my opinion. But anyway, speaking of, you ready to get to our next one?
Sort of. Before I do, I want to share a link YouTube on Discord. There was a short clip I forgot to put in the slideshow.
Cool.
So hold on, let me send it to you.
Yes, sir.
Oh no. Copy. Peace. There you go.
Cool. I'll take it.
So
hold on, I'm getting to
you can
the
just
slide.
link it up. We'll play it first. Oh, you're actually on adding the slide, Joe?
No.
Oh. Okay.
I'm just getting to your. Here you go. Cool. I'm ready whenever you are. So.
Okay. So, so my last segment, we talked about a little bit of the history of the police state, and I mentioned how the police state has evolved from what it was in the 1800s. You know, so now we're going to fast forward to the present day of how it's evolved into more surveillance. Now, Reef, shout out to you. You've talked a lot about the surveillance state in depth.
Yep.
You actually brought this story to me, but I think it does connect. Actually, to a lot of stories. I know, like, because there's a focus on this story in regards to Minneapolis, Minnesota. Especially given the shooting that happened at that church, I believe it was last week.
Right.
You know, there's a potential of how surveillance might kind of come to play a part in light of that story, especially since it involves children, sadly. But I think also the potential how this means politically, especially given Democrats and how underhanded they can be. So, especially with their current mayor, who I think is kind of touted as somewhat decent, but really is as shillish as they come. So, but we're going to talk about ZENCITY for a bit. Now, actually, let me look up very quick. What is ZENCITY? So according to their website, ZENCITY is an innovative platform designed to help local governments better understand and respond to the needs and concerns of their communities. Again, this is through the means of surveillance. And you could probably guess, given the stories that we covered, who is, like, you know, number one in terms of surveillance in the world. You know, our favorite country of the moment.
Isn't
so Israel. So given that connection, we can kind of tell it's bullshit. So, but let's play. This again. This is from their website. We'll see what they actually say. Well, we'll see what they say, and then we're going to do a deep dive thanks to Mint Press News, and roll back the current a little bit on this platform. So go ahead and read.
Trust between governments and the communities they serve is at a crossroads. Barriers to participation, contentious meetings, and outdated approaches to solicit input emphasize the voices of the few and exclude the many. We call this the STP problem, and it's standing in the way of effective government. To address it, you need a solution built for our times, using a multi-model method to understand resident needs and priorities. ZenCity is the most robust platform for community trust. Our tools allow you to be proactive in including everyone with real-time representative surveys. Keep up with online discussions. Digitally collaborate on key projects. And measure and improve services performance. Used by hundreds of agencies worldwide, from large metro areas to small towns. ZenCity is your partner in leading with confidence and building community trust.
All right, so sounds good.
Yeah.
Right? Nothing necessarily wrong with that. I mean, just for a normal person, it sounds like, oh, great. Like, you know, you're essentially collecting data off of you. That in of itself should be a red flag, you know, but this data is helping to determine how essentially how government should run better in terms of the citizens that live in a certain town or city or whatever. So it sounds good on the surface. However, as we're going to read and see from Mint Press News, ZenCity has has more of a nefarious mission.
Yeah.
So this is written by, as she did an expose on them, Namar Adley, who is editor-in-chief of Mint Press News, where she tells this investigation piece, ZenCity, Israel's spy agency, is exporting occupation tech to America. What is that? What is she talking about, you may ask? Well, let's see what she says. 5 years on from George Floyd's death, Minneapolis residents are pushing back against the city's contract with ZenCity, a tech company founded and headed by veterans of the Israeli spying organization Unit 8200. ZenCity has signed a 3-year contract with the city of Minneapolis, enable it to gather information about residents' attitudes towards the police. Again, red flag. But this contract is only one of many. In fact, ZenCity services are employed by dozens of municipalities across the United States to survey ordinary Americans and target protesters. ZenCity uses AI to collect millions of data points from your emails and posts on Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, and Nextdoor. From these, it gauges security threats and advises local governments on how to act accordingly. This is, again, going off our last... You can zoom out for a second, Reef.
Yeah.
This is exactly why, again, when we said, in terms of organizing, we have to figure out how we're able to do this offline, because of shit like this. And given that, as I said in the last segment, the police surveillance state is 10,000 steps ahead of us. And again, we've seen in the history how they've managed to infiltrate, groups and organizations even without the tech. Can you imagine what they're able to do now with the tech? So, so this is again why we're saying to you guys, be careful of generally any practices or even what you say, like even with us online right now, like our fear is that YouTube will just pull the plug on us at any given time, given the stories that we talk about. We're not ad friendly. So that's why, again, we need the support of you guys in order to keep the show going, at least on YouTube, at least financially. So, but I digress. In Kent County, Michigan, ZenCity analyzed residents' online footprints and used them to determine what levels of security the local government needed to meet the protest movement. In other words, they are there to insulate the government from the voice of the people and limit our ability to affect change. Sorry. So, again, sounds very similar to what we talked about in the previous segment. Unit 8200 is the centerpiece of the vast Israeli surveillance operation on Palestine. Palestinians' every movement is tracked by facial recognition cameras. Their calls and messages are recorded, and compromising information is gathered for extortion and blackmail. If you are cheating on your spouse or need medical attention, that information is used against you to turn you into an informant. One Unit 82 veteran revealed that they were instructed to learn every Arabic slang word for gay in order to listen out for them in conversation. Disgusting.
Yeah.
Even worse, Unit 8200 uses AI to develop kill lists of tens of thousands of Gazians for the IDF to target. And it is widely reported that it was behind the Lebanese pager attack, an act of terrorism that injured thousands of civilians. Israel treats Gaza and the West Bank as a laboratory, sharpening its tech before selling it around the world. Now that tech has come to the United States. Residents in Minneapolis are rising up and demanding that the city drop its contract with ZenCity. So,
okay.
All right. So from here, Namar actually went and talked to several activists regarding ZenCity in Minneapolis. So we're going to watch her. So, Repress, please don't flag us for this.
Yeah, you owe us one anyway. We're going to leave your logo up, Mint Press. God. Help some brothers out, Mint Press. Thank you. Minar, come on the show. You're welcome.
Right.
You're welcome to come on the show. We would love to have you.
So here's Minar, who will talk about ZenCity, and then we'll chat.
5 years on, and organizers seeking justice for George Floyd's death are pushing back against a Minneapolis city contract with an Israeli tech company called ZenCity.
What do you want? I can breathe. Please, the name of it. I can breathe shit.
Bro, get in the car, man.
I will.
And guess where they learned it from?
I can't move.
I've been waiting the whole time. Get in the car.
Mama.
Get up and get in the car right.
I can't.
Oh, they learned it from Israelis. Who would have thought?
I'm here with Mint Press News in the heart of the anti-police brutality movement here in Minneapolis to expose ZenCity. ZenCity was founded by Eyal Levy, a former member of Israel's elite cybersecurity unit 8200. After serving in the IDF, Unit 8200 graduates go on to build spyware companies that are used as military-grade cyber weapons for the State of Israel. Most well-known is NSO Group, which is behind the Pegasus software. This was installed on Jamal Khashoggi's phone before he was murdered. These illegal mass surveillance tools are used to blackmail Palestinians, sow divisions and distrust, and then sold on the international market as field-tested to maintain Israeli apartheid to the worst violators of human rights. The same technologies that are being deployed to spy on Palestinians are now being used right here in the city of Minneapolis. And it's not just here in Minneapolis. Israel's notorious Unit 8200 surveillance tech is being exported in cities across the country.
So the city of Minneapolis has a $500,000 contract with ZenCity to survey people in Minneapolis. They target survey participants through existing algorithms on our phones. But there's two smaller surveys that they did not need city council approval for. And one is to survey residents about what we want the future of George Floyd Square to be, and the other is the future of the 3rd Precinct that was burned down during the uprising. I think since October 7th, a lot of people have opened their eyes to the atrocities and what's happening in the apartheid state. With this very sustained, very blatant genocide that's happening right now against Gaza, I see people maintaining their outrage and demanding justice. We're willing to keep trying anything. Something has to work here. We have to keep raising our voices.
While Israel's committing a genocide in Gaza, residents here in Minneapolis are questioning why Mayor Jacob Frey is funding an Israeli tech company to spy on its citizens instead of seeking justice for George Floyd. I was actually in the city of Minneapolis after George Floyd was killed, and I was covering the protests, and then I ended up joining the protests because we were so outraged by the way the police were responding to the residents of Minneapolis. They were tear gassed, shot at with rubber bullets, and it almost reminded me of living under Israeli occupation. It really felt like I was reliving, going through checkpoints in Al-Quds.
I think there's a lot of shared passion against the regimes that have taken hold here and in the Israeli apartheid state. I see a lot of people waking up to and learning about these shared practices, the shared techniques between the Israeli armed forces and the forces here. Our sheriff's department and our police department both have a history of training with the Israeli forces, and Palestinians in Palestine have used social media to share practices of defense against violent policing. And so the solidarity between people has only gotten stronger.
Israel uses the West Bank and Gaza as a laboratory to test its surveillance tech, and then it exports it on the international market to sell to Western governments who use this technology to monitor, surveil, and crack down on dissent.
And so these three surveys together, the $500,000 contract to survey our general opinion on the MPD and these other two smaller ones, are being used by Mayor Frey's office to really paint a picture of policing in Minneapolis that benefits the city and takes away the agency of the residents here. These are targeted surveys that don't gather a large perspective from community members. We've been working really hard to have our voices heard in the city about what we want the future of George Floyd Square to be and what we want the future of the 3rd Precinct to be, and also about our opinions of MPD. And they're going about it wrong. And not only are they going about the process wrong, they're doing it in a way that benefits an Israeli tech company through these contracts. In February 2024, Minneapolis City Council passed one of the...
So again, and I want to make this clear, Mayor Frey is a Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the people that allegedly care about you and your human and justice and all this kind of bullshit. So again, this is the city where George Floyd was murdered 5 years ago. And he was mayor then. So the idea that since then, he's basically bootlicking for, so I wouldn't say he's a Zionist, but he's definitely pro-Israel, in terms of, having, basically buying this program, this software, or whatever you want to call it, to essentially survey Minneapolis for dissent, mostly, but then to kind of keep everything in check when really, as the one was saying, he's not attending to his constituents in the way that he should in order to really figure out what the people want. So again, this is kind of like the bullshit that the Democrats do underhandedly without any media attention. So, so we can talk about Trump and how he does things a lot more overtly, but this is the kind of bullshit that Democrat mayors are doing. In the shadows in order to protect themselves at your expense. So again, this is kind of why, as we keep saying, you guys need to protect yourselves, including how you move online, because they're watching you. They're watching what we type, they're watching what you say, and they're watching your every move. And any slight act of resistance, that will be cause for them to, I'm not going to say anything that will get me in trouble on YouTube, but you can finish the lines.
Yep.
You can go ahead and finish.
Come on, I pressed it.
Contracts. In February 2024, Minneapolis City Council passed one of the strongest ceasefire resolutions in the country. And we see this as an opportunity for City Council to step up in this obligation and its stated commitment for Palestine against the genocide in Gaza, to act on that commitment and cut the contract. We know that City Council has the power to push the mayor on this. We have a petition circulating. We're meeting with our council members. We're swaying them towards doing the right thing. We don't have faith in this mayor. We believe that Mayor Jacob Frey is going to maintain this contract, but it's also an election year. We're going to make this an election issue and make sure that Frey is out Well, they hijack these causes by silencing Palestinians, for one, making it sure that Palestinian voices aren't heard, neutralizing, taking the bite out of these movements that have a lot of teeth in them. And Democrats are scared, and they want to maintain the status quo, and we're not going to let them. Yeah.
So actually, go back a second. Go back to that. Scroll back like 5 seconds, because this is also very significant. You know, like. So Minnesota DFL revokes endorsement of Minneapolis mayoral candidate Omar Fateh. So this also got some news in mainstream media. So essentially, Fateh is Muslim from Somalia. So his endorsement from the Democratic Party in Minnesota got revoked. You know, because he's kind of similar to Zoran Mandani. Like, now I don't know anything about Fateh, like what he stands for, whatever. But my guess is, if he's anything like Mandani, he's kind of
another puppet.
Yeah, probably. But he describes himself as socialist, so and Muslim. So those are kind of like the two key words that are kind of like, oh no, we got to do something, you know? So, so God forbid that we actually have a socialist actually, again, don't know, but I'm speaking in terms of Democrats. God forbid that we actually have a socialist who actually allegedly cares for the people. Like, we have to take him out. So it's the idea that Democrats essentially cock block progress on the left. That's their job. Like they can't even pretend that they fight the right. Right. They can't pretend that they fight the right. They don't. If anything, they placate to the right. They hate the left more. As much as they say that they hate Republicans, but they will always kind of go and say, oh, we need to work. Like, even with my mayor, just like a couple of days ago, she's basically thanking Trump for having the National fucking Guard here. Like, make that make sense, please. Like, I think she's thinking, oh, I'm playing 4D chess just to kind of get Trump off my back. But like, the implications of you saying that right now, where like many people in DC are angry with you. Like, in terms of, like, as I said, my neighborhood has been swarming with ICE agents and police for like the last 2.5 weeks. Like, I'm kind of fearful, as I keep saying, like walking down the street, you know, anytime, and feel like I might get picked up by somebody, especially given what I do here, you know? So, so again, this is kind of shows how Democrats hate you, like, and will work against you and against any progress for you. So, and these are local people. This is not like federal government. These are your local politicians who are doing this shit. So, you know, be forewarned in that. It's like, this is why we keep saying you need to be watching what's happening locally, because they have more direct view on your life. So the fact that Minneapolis is being surveyed like this, and they have the potential to knock out any dissent, you know, especially post George Floyd, and especially given what happened, you know, with that shooting at that church, like over a week ago, that's going to be more cause for more surveillance.
Yep.
Like, in a more underhanded way. So this is the kind of shit that you need to be careful for in your local communities. Which is why we keep saying, you know who your council people are. You know, because, you know, they're the ones who essentially work on your budget. So your council members will be paying for this shit. So, yeah, so that's why we need to be careful. But yeah, let's finish the clip.
And we're not going to let them. Yeah.
On May 25th, 2020, George Floyd was murdered by MPD officer Derek Chauvin. Officer Chauvin used the same neon neck technique that is used by the IDF to kill Palestinians. In 2024, U.S. police killed 1,375 people, a number that has risen each year since 2020. Activists across the country are working hard to pressure their local governments to cut ties with... I can't read that fast, Minpress. God. No, back a little bit more. Activists across the country are working hard to pressure their local governments to cut ties with companies that contribute to these atrocities.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah. And this is in partner with Cut the Contract, which I think they have linked in their stuff, which their articles linked in the description below, as well as I linked this video in chat. Please do go give Mint Press a like and a view. They deserve that. But yeah, anything else?
So kind of going off of this, it kind of relates. So when segments like roll over into life, so as you guys know, my city's occupied right now, and now there's talk of Chicago on the chopping block right now. So I guess you would say he's a community organizer, Jamal Green. Who, not to say I follow him, but I know of him on Twitter. I know Savvy Sabs has had him on her show like a couple of times or whatever. So I happened to come across this tweet that he put up a video on Twitter that I was kind of perturbed by, and I responded to him. And like power on Twitter, according to Indy and Reef, is that people respond to me. Like higher up people, not always, but more often than not, respond to me. Not sure why, because I'm just a nobody. But he said this, which kind of perturbed me, especially like I didn't know of this story until after the fact. But I wanted to play what he said here because, as I said, he's a community organizer. But let's play it, and I'll talk more about what I had a problem with. All
right, I've sat back and I've watched everybody have their statements about violence in Chicago and Donald Trump bringing troops. And I'm going to tell you where I stand. And if you know me, you already know where I stand. But let me first get this out. I am sick and tired of hearing Brandon Johnson and his paid comrades to go around saying violence is low to try to pad his record. It is utter bullshit, and it is a disrespect to our seniors who are being shot up in front of their senior buildings, to our children who are being shot up walking to school. It is a disrespect to all of the families that are constantly being shot each and every day. Chicago has a violence problem. And the only reason why violence is down a little bit is because violence went up during COVID. People lost their jobs. COVID had folks in the house, economic insecurity. We know why violence was high during COVID. It was higher in every city around the country. So now that folks are back to work and we are post-COVID, violence have come down a bit. But if you look at right before COVID, where 500 people were killed in 2019 and over 2,000 people were shot, we're right back at those numbers. Almost 300 people have been shot this year, and 300 people have been killed this year, and 1,300 people have been shot. That means that we're on par to go back to the numbers where we were before COVID happened. So stop this bullshit rhetoric. Now, what do we do about it? Do we occupy our city with military forces? No, that's not the answer. But we do need federal intervention. We do need task force. We do need Donald Trump to work with our government so that we can deploy as much resources as possible so that we can clean our streets up. But that's going to take for our corrupt politicians to want to work with every level of government. And they don't want to. You know why? Because violence pays. Violence make makes it a topic where people can go out and say, well, I decreased violence a few percent, vote for me again, and keep getting campaign donations and keep getting kickbacks from all of their friends that they're patting their pockets for while they're in office. Let's talk about this. In the last 20 years, while 22,000 people have been shot and over 10,000 people have been killed in the city of Chicago in the last 20 years, they have spent $7 to $10 billion on politics, on political campaigns from state to local, all the way down. $7 to $10 billion. They spent $1 billion on violence intervention. They just spent $1 billion in the city of Chicago on migrants alone in 3 years, from 2022 to 2025. So when they talk about actually doing something about violence, none of them motherfuckers have ever sat down and actually did what they were supposed to do to get our communities together. So this is about politics. This is not about you. This is not about the people in communities. They need to stop playing politics, work with the man, or he gonna come in and run all over you.
So
Okay.
so my response, it's mixed. Okay. So
Sure.
I totally get where he's coming from in terms of, look, he has a Democrat mayor who really hasn't done a whole lot to Chicago. So I totally get his anger there. So I look, that in of itself, I totally get. Where he lost me was, he was like, oh, we have to talk to Trump. No, you don't. Like, you don't move from the blue devil to the red one in thinking that he's going to do any better, you know? And given what he's doing in DC, and again, like, I just, this is why I said to you, maybe yesterday, I think this is kind of low key, you know, and I didn't even think of this back then, but now considering what, for this article you sent me, he's kind of low key kind of promoting the police state and the surveillance state, like in what he was kind of saying. For like, who's to say that Trump will not kind of initiate something like ZENCITY anyway, or what Brandon Johnson might be doing all now, for what we know. So, but again, you don't fight the devil with another devil. And this is something, even before thinking about all of this, it's something that I called him out on. So if you go back in the slide,
yep.
So I called him out on Twitter from this tweet. He posted that video on his head. So I said to him, instead of talking to Trump, how about you talk to the people of Chicago, Jamal Green? You are a low-key right-winger, you know? And I said that because, like, again, you know, why are you talking to politicians? Look, I get your beef with Johnson, but, like, Trump ain't going to do anything different than what Johnson is doing. If anything, it's just going to cause more chaos. His response, you're obviously from D.C., how about you do some research on the impact I make on my city every day before saying ridiculousness because I speak common sense fool? Notice the gangster speak there, you know. So again, like, don't get it twisted. Like, he's essentially calling me a liberal. Look, I ain't one of these DC liberals. You guys know this. Like, so he missed me with that. So I responded back, I know exactly who you are. Again, I've seen his movements online, and they're kind of all over the place. And as a person who also makes an impact with citizens on the ground, I know better to give an ear to anyone who's a part of the empire, regardless of which side they're on. The only people who can make Chicago safe is you and your neighbors, not some wannabe fascist who is distracting people from his crimes. Empower your people, Jamal Green. Don't give Trump the energy. Then I continued later. My students returned to school today, and many parents are terrified of leaving their homes on the account of the possibility of being captured by ICE agents. Do you want that kind of chaos in the name of cleaning up Chicago?
Which I think he did say that was wrong in the video.
Right, but in talking with Trump, that's what you're bringing. Like, Like, it's not going to be any. And look, here's the thing with this, and I said this on Twitter maybe about a day ago. If Trump really wanted to clean up crime in like cities, I wouldn't necessarily have an issue with that. Like, but so far he's been to LA, DC, and possibly Chicago, and I guess New York might be on the pipeline. I ain't seen Trump planning to go to Miami or New Orleans or Dallas or Phoenix or really any southern city as of right now. Like, you know, Miami in particular, there's crime there. I don't see Trump making calls to go down to Miami, right? So it will make more. Not to say I agree, but I could maybe entertain the idea if he was willing to go to, you know, every city. You know, the issue that I have is that, as I said before, this is all targeted against cities that have high Black populations, that happen to have Black mayors, at least right now, in a way to kind of, again, red meat to his base, to kind of say, oh, he's owning the libs and taking down crime in these cities that are run by Black people. You know, I want to make a fool out of them, essentially, like he's doing with Bowser now. Basically, he's saying jump, she's saying how high. Like, so, but again, it's the idea of kind of talking about resistance. You should be speaking to community members. You should be talking about how to defend yourselves. Not entertaining the idea of what Trump is able to bring on a federal level. That's only going to add to more chaos to your city. So that's what really all that I was trying to say to him. It's like, you're a community organizer. Organize. Like, don't kind of complete to Trump being like, oh, we'll entertain the idea of what you're able to bring when he hasn't gotten a proven result. And even with all of that,
pause. That's why I think that's my problem with organizing, because that's what people think it is. They think that fucking organizing is talking to politicians to get their needs met, because that's what he's overall saying. He's not even saying that, like, bring the federal things. He's saying, like, well, we got to deal with who's in power so that they, you know, meet the needs that are actually the needs we have. But they never fucking listen, and all it does is capitulate you further to their actions. Either party.
But that's what I'm saying. It's like, again, he shouldn't be talking or entertaining what a politician is saying or promising to bring. He should be activating his community. So, you know, it's the community that is going to make the turnaround, as we saw in the last segment. You know, like, the community is what if done the right way, is what's going to fear the elite class. Not Trump, not Johnson, the people. So you're on the ground, allegedly, sir. You should be doing what you can to empower the people that you claim you work for. So that's the issue that I had with his statement. Mostly, it's the idea that, you know, he, as you said, entertaining the idea of like what Trump's going to bring. It's like, he says he's going to do this. Our city sucks. We can entertain that. But even with that, it's like, if Trump wanted to deal with crime, which is tied to poverty, why hasn't the federal minimum wage increased? Right? Why are these tariffs going all to hell and people are now to scrape in order to buy food? Like, we're not hearing any conversation about those things, which are going to help people probably a way lot more. But instead, it's just bringing in the National Guard. And even right now, the National Guard in DC, what they're doing, picking up trash. Which, because they defunded the National Park Service, you know, like, that would have been their job anyway. That's what the National Guard is being subjected to. Like, if they're not trying to wrangle up folks. So, but again, I just feel like him opening the door to Trump is also kind of opening the door to possibly the surveillance state as well. That, I think, especially in light of what this segment was, and again, you show me this after the fact, is what I kind of think about now in terms of kind of going hammy with these politicians on either side, because both sides benefit from the surveillance state, especially when it's tied to Israel, which Jamar has not mentioned at all. And who's going to get affected by that? Black people. So you trying to bring in Trump, as to me, is bringing in the Pandora's box. And you should have nothing to do with that, I think, is really my point.
Well, I'm with you. Yeah, I mean,
that's all I got.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
mean that. Yeah. Well, again, shout out to Repress for that, and it might be something, you know, like in ZENCITY, they said in several municipalities throughout the country.
Yeah.
It could be something maybe researching as to which ones. So, but I think, again, this is more of a cause for people to get more involved in local politics, because this is the kind of bullshit that they're pulling on you, like directly, and you may not even know. So it could be worth finding out, you know, and let us know in the comments, like, if you're aware that ZENCITY or some other surveillance platform might be kind of in use of your city or town, and are you planning to, or would you consider but demanding change from your council people in order to remove it, especially given it's tied to Israel. So even inadvertently, you're paying for Israel if you're having these platforms being paid for with your tax dollars in terms of surveilling you. So let us know in the comments what you think. If you want to continue supporting our content, scan the QR code or type in the Ko-fi link that you see at the bottom of your screen. Or if you're in the YouTube chat live, you can type in ! donate and the Ko-fi link will pop up. We will also have several other links to other fundraising apps, programs, listed in the description of this video or in the segment once we clip it out. And like, comment, subscribe, share. Please share, especially this. People need to be more aware what's happening locally. So this could maybe a platform that your city might be using. It might be worth researching to see if it is, and trying to do something about it to remove it. But either way, thank you guys for watching.
Nope. All right. Before we get to that, let's check with chat slightly. But I saw someone, where was it at? I had it. Kill Your Egregore said, ZENCITY, what the fuck kind of name is that? I practice Zen, and this ain't it. So
it's Zen for the elites, not for you.
Yep.
It makes them sleep better at night knowing that any points of resistance is being tampered down. So that's who the Zen is for.
Kill Your Egregores, and there's your 15-minute city, your mega block, your peach trees,
your cop cities.
Yeah. The level of control that Is Not Real has is astounding, says Sean the Accord Lord.
Yes. Again, the fact that you think all of this is federal. No, it's local.
Yeah.
So as I said, it might be something you might want to look into. Is your local government implementing ZENCITY or some other type of surveillance?
Yeah.
To watch you all.
We have Kieran Pine, Malcolm and Martin warned liberalism 25 is covert fascism. Yep. People talking about digital currencies a bit. But anyway, all right. Let's get to our last one. Speaking of mega cities. But I brought this partially because it looked familiar, right? When I saw these images being put out, I went, I recognize that. My fucking memory banks decided to pull the dusty fucking book off its shelf that these images were located in. So we'll get to what I mean in just a second. But first, I'll explain what I'm talking about, right? This is from Brett Wilkins over at SheerPost, right? And this is, again, September 2nd, right? A couple days ago, yesterday, right? Trump admin circulating plan, right? Circulating plan to transform depopulated Gaza into high-tech cash cow. And you see these AI images. Keep these in your head. We'll get to where they come from in a second. Right? So, White House is circulating a plan to transform substantially depopulated Gaza into U.S. Trump's vision of a high-tech Riviera of the Middle East, which we've covered before. Right? Brimming with private investment and replete with artificial intelligence-powered smart cities. Again, sounds very familiar, Brett. Maybe you're watching. Maybe you saw us talk about it. I don't know. That's according to a 38-page prospectus for a proposed Gaza reconstruction, economic acceleration, and transform great trust obtained by the Washington Post. Oh, really? Obtained by the Washington Post. And published in a report on Sunday. Parts of the proposal were previously reported by the Financial Times. So this is what he's talking about, right? This is the thing that's being circulated around. Okay, it's a little PowerPoint, right? From a demolished Iranian proxy to a prosperous Abrahamic ally, right? And this is their architectural model for what they want Gaza to look like, right? So keep that in mind.
Well, why can't America look like that?
So, well,
Israel, why can't America look like that?
Look, this is a U.S.-led multilateral custodianship, otherwise known as a fucking occupation. That's what that is, right? Leading to a reformed Palestinian self-government. It can start as a U.S.-Israel bilateral agreement, taking control from Israel to the U.S. once Hamas is disarmed, and evolve to a former multilateral trusteeship. $70 billion to $100 billion in public investment, triggering a $35 to $65 billion private investment. Funding covers all aspects, including 10 mega construction projects, humanitarian assistance, economic development, generous voluntary they fucking, you know what this is. This is the shit. Look, go ahead.
Pause for 1 second. So I'm somewhat of a, not nerd, but like a public transportation connoisseur. You kind of know it. And like, I've been watching with interest and disgust how Philly's, like SEPTA, like Philly's Metro regional public transportation system has been cut due to lack of funding. Now, to me, that's just ridiculous.
Sure.
Be given, like, that's a public need, and you're basically willing to just trash it. But I think that's just kind of synonymous of America anyway, given how little we fund our public transportation systems anyway. But looking here, it's like billions of dollars towards a foreign country for their public transportation.
But it's America first, Collin. It's America first, bro. You know? Anyway. Fucking, we're gonna create jobs. Yeah, the fuck it doesn't. Yeah, okay. So this I found interesting. Look at this little map here, right? So what do they find important? Right? Let's look over the legend. Let's do some map reading. We're going to check the legend. Look, this is a major port. This is a proposed mega project. Metal and minerals are right here in gray. This blue is Gaza, right? And this is a planned rail and a proposed rail, right? So, okay, let's look at all that. Look at all that big gray strip that they want, right? From Saudi Arabia all the way up here. Look at these ports. Bing, bing, bing. Look, more ports. Bing, bing, bing. Look, there's Gaza right there, right in the fucking way. That's their thought. It's right there in the way. Okay. So if we're gonna get all this, we gotta take this little bit out, right? So and look at these mega projects. Look, here they are. Look at all this shit. Or that's water. Where's the mega project? Is in fucking weird green. Right? So this bit, right? Okay. So, in case you were wondering.
Egypt, partially.
Yeah. So, you were talking about urban design, right? This is here, right? So, is the 19th century Paris. This plan aims to address one of Gaza's ongoing insurgency root causes, its urban design. So remember last week when we talked about urbanization, right? And how they're trying to figure out ways of dealing with an urban insurgency, right? This is one of the ways. This is why people are like, smart cities are fucking stupid and they're going to use to control you. That's what they're trying to do, right? So they're trying to make the urban environment not as difficult for them to like police, essentially, right? So new design envisions 6 8-pie slice shaped smart cities with mixed use residences, commerce, light industry, and other facilities, including clinics and hospitals, schools, and more. With large alleys at their center, the cities will be interconnected through a ring, a tram, and a highway, enabling excellent access to industrial, tourism, and logistical areas. Also giving them access.
Boring.
Yep. Green area, yeah, but it's secretly green areas, including agricultural land, parks, and golf courses, will separate the cities. All services and economy in these cities will be done through ID-based, AI-powered digital systems. Okay.
No.
Any questions? So this is their little, right, like you get your little freeway, big circle freeway, right? Interconnected freeways, and the cities are at the points. This is their idea, right? So look at this though, Abraham Gateway. That's railways to Egypt, Israel, and yeah. So this is economics and logistics and control, right? Advanced manufacturing example, right? An EV industrial zone. So they're wanting to build electric vehicles here, right? We've talked about this literally ad nauseum, right? So minerals and materials shipped from KSA and UAE. So why do you think they've been involved, right? In all this, it's because they've got their pie in the mix. So guess what they are also part of this thing being shared. So look, here the SDS logistics area and the aid distribution area that they pretty much turn into a kill zone for IDF, as well as themselves, right? So, but yeah, so let's look at their primary investment categories, right? This is who they're trying to market this to. This is a marketing presentation, keep in mind, right? So look, the permanent residential housing, Care Bear, we got to cover that. You can make money giving people houses, right? So first year investment, 5.2 billion, you'll get back, right? Total investment, 35.3 billion, right? So they're putting these, right? Dutco Construction, Atco, Arabian Construction, Saudi Bin Laden Group, right? What else we got? We've got infrastructure rebuild. Guess who's part of this? Look at that. Fucking IKEA. They got IKEA down here. Gonna get those fucking Billy bookcases in, you know? Fucking okay. Like, and these is in the billions of investment dollars that they're telling people that they should put in. Right? You know, talking about debris removal. Right? All that shit. This is what they're hoping someone else will pay for.
Right.
For their own.
That in of itself, I'm like, how much money would that cost to clean / purify,
2 billion.
whatever you want to call
2
it?
billion, they're saying. So 4.1 billion overall.
That seems low to me.
I mean, it's billions of dollars. So we got security.
Probably closer to the trillions, if anything else.
Security's got to make money here, right? You know, you got your fucking Dynacorp, your AKE Group, your Mission Essential, your MAG Aerospace, right? All these fucking Blackwater bullshits, they got to make money, right? Who else, Care Bear? Well, we're going to have to teach these kids not to fucking blow us up if we're going to be here, right? So we're going to get Bluemont involved. We're going to get Carmod and ACOM and whatever this education above all group is, right? You know, 2.6 billion total investment is what they're looking for. So, yeah, look, we
can barely get that for schools here.
Public and private partnership. There's another word for that, for public and private partnering. Starts with an F. Y'all kids will know. So, a PPP model for key infrastructure investments. The trust can leverage private capital, industry, technical experts, and shared accountability to accelerate project delivery, improve efficiencies, and deliver high-quality, sustainable infrastructure to support long-term economic recovery. PPP investments will be made for synergy, power, brand. Fucking corporate PowerPoints are the worst things in the world, dude. Again, medical, rail infrastructure, right? All that shit. But anyway, private industries, they got Tesla and Amazon, all that shit for data centers, all that stuff is part of this too, right? IHG, hotels and resorts, right? Is that Hilton? What's IHG? Anyone know in the chat? Mandarin Oriental Hotel Group, right? They're here too. So I'm sure there's some big money powers there, but overall, right, this is what they're valuing Gaza to be, right? A 320 billion asset value by year 10 will create significant value for all involved stakeholders, right? So, I mean, this is just free money for them. That's what they're looking at this as. So, back to Brett. Gaza can transform into a Mediterranean hub for manufacturing, trade, data, and tourism, benefiting from its strategic location, access to markets, resources, and a young workforce, all supported by Israeli tech and Gulf Cooperation Council investments, the prospectus states. However, to journalist Hala Jaber, the plan amounts to genocide packaged as real estate. The Great Trust was drafted by some of the same Israelis behind the controversial GHF, whose aid distribution points in Gaza have been the sites of deliberate massacres and other incidents in which thousands of aid-seeking Palestinians have been killed or wounded. According to the Post, financial modeling for the Great Trust proposal was done by a team working at the time for the Boston Consulting Group, which played a key role in creating GHF. BCG told the Post that the firm did not approve work on the trust plan and that two senior partners who led the financial modeling were subsequently terminated. The Great Trust envisions a U.S.-led multilateral custodianship lasting a decade or longer and leading to a reformed Palestinian self-governance after Gaza is demilitarized and de-radicalized. Some
Which
fucking
means what?
Orwellian shit is what that is. We're gonna have fucking re-education camps.
So
Puppet. Yeah, a vassal
Another
state
puppet.
for Israel and the United States and whatever. So Whitney Webb responds the plan to turn Gaza into an ethnically cleansed Riviera of the Middle East appears to go back almost a decade to 2016, when Paolo Zempoli, the man who says he introduced Trump to Melania and who is now his special envoy for global partnerships, was pitching it to journalists and politicians alike. Zempoli, a protege of Jean Casablancas, also has considered Epstein network connections and has been involved in an insane number of scams and scandals over the year. Mark Goodwin and Whitney Webb published a 9,000-page autism info dump that is difficult to read all the way through, but if you want to, it's linked on her website. So, but Decentered News says, good find, Whitney Webb. Did Mattia Ferrasi or anyone else quote Zempoli saying this at the time? Whereas February 2025, the first time it was attributed to him publicly. The idea of turning Gaza into the Riviera of the Middle East was also put forward by Israeli settler Org Nachala in a promo vid published no later than early 2024. Possibly a little before that, some of Trump's other talking points on the subject echo Nachala as well, particularly its director, Daniela Wise, who CNN has called the godmother of the Zionist settler movement. I just love how that name can make Collin so upset. You know, can't blame him. Also, this just in, journalist in my ear, Vanessa Beeley, is saying that the Tony Blair Institute also involved here. So, yeah, just a fucking cavalcade of shit. That's who's involved here. So, just speaking of that, Josh Paul, former U.S. State Department official who resigned in October of the Biden administration decision to sell more arms to Israel as it raged a war on Gaza, increasingly viewed by experts as genocidal, told Democracy Now! Last week that Trump's plan for Gaza is essentially a new form of colonialism and transition from Israeli colonialism to corporate colonialism. The Great Trust contains two proposals for Gaza's more than 2 million Palestinians. Under one plan, approximately 75% of Gaza's population would remain in the Strip during its transformation. The second proposal involves up to 500,000 Gazans relocating to third countries, 75% of them permanently. And I don't know about you, but I would not trust the Israelis leading me towards an airplane. Right. Yes, right this way, sir. Your flight is through here. Just first step through this fucking shower. Like, at this point, I don't fucking have hope for that. The prospectus does not say how many Palestinians would leave under the relocation option. Those who chose to permanently relocate to unspecified countries would each receive $5,000 plus 4 years of subsidized rent and subsidized food for a year. Paid for by whom? Who's paying for that?
Us more. Probably us.
Could you imagine if Collin, look, I'll offer you $5,000 plus rent and food covered for a year if you go to fucking, I don't know, like Ghana. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, subsidized. So, like, I'll have to pay a little bit, but like,
sure.
If you do that,
you're also getting $5,000, right? The Grant Trust allocates $6 billion for temporary housing for Palestinians who remain, and $5 billion for those who relocate. Okay. Proposal projects huge projects for investors, nearly 4 times the return on investment, an annual revenue of $4.5 billion within a decade. The project would be a boon for companies ranging from builders, including Saudi Bin Laden Group, infrastructure specialists like IKEA, the mercenary firm Academia, former Blackwater, right? U.S. military contractor KSOL, which last year was found liable for torturing Iraqis at Abu Ghraib, electric vehicle manufacturer Tesla, Amazon, hoteliers Mandarin Oriental, and IHG Hotels and Resorts. So, Central to the plan are 10 mega projects, including half a dozen smart cities, a regional logistics hub to be built over the ruins of the southern city of Rafah, a central highway named after Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Saudi Arabia and other wealthy Gulf states feature prominently in the proposal, and investors, large-scale solar and desalination plants, a U.S. data safe haven, an Elon Musk smart manufacturing zone, and Gaza Trump Riviera and islands similar to the Palm Islands in Dubai. In addition to massive financial gains for private U.S. investors, the great trustless strategic benefits for the United States that could enable it to strengthen its hold in the East Mediterranean and secure U.S. industry access to 1.3 trillion of rare earth minerals from the Gulf. In case you were wondering, earlier this year, Trump said the U.S. would take over Gaza, American real estate developers would level it out and build the Riviera of the Middle East atop its ruins after Palestinians, all of them, leave Palestine's coastal enclave. The president called for the voluntary transfer of Gazans to Egypt and Jordan, both of whose leaders vehemently rejected the plan. Voluntary immigration is widely considered a euphemism for ethnic cleansing, given Palestinians' general unwillingness to leave their homeland. Also a war crime, Brett, by the way. I know you know. According to May, survey by the Palestinian Center for Policy and Survey Research, nearly half of Gazans expressed a willingness to apply for Israeli assistance to relocate to other countries. Of course they would. They've been fucking bombed for fucking ages. However, many in Gazans say that they would never leave the Strip, where most inhabitants are descendants of survivors of the Nakba, the ethnic cleansing of more than 750,000 Palestinians during the creation of Israel in 1948. Some are actual Nakba survivors. I'm staying in a partially destroyed house in Khan Yunis now, one Gazan man told the Post, but we could renovate. I refuse to be made to go to another country, Muslim or not. This is my homeland. The Post reporter follows a meeting last Wednesday at the White House where Trump admin officials and invited guests, including UK Prime Minister Tony Blair, investor and real estate developer Jared Kushner, who is also the president's son-in-law, and Israeli Minister of Strategic Affairs Ron Dermer discussed Gaza's future. Of course fucking Tony Blair showed the fuck up. While Dermer reportedly claimed that Israel does not seek to permanently occupy Gaza, Prime Minister Netanyahu is wanted by the ICJ for alleged crimes against humanity and war crimes, including murder and forced starvation in Gaza, said they will conquer the entire Strip and keep at least large parts of it. We conquer, cleanse, and stay until Hamas is destroyed, Bezalel Smotrich recently said. On the way, we annihilate everything that still remains. The Knesset also recently hosted a conference called the Gaza Riviera, From Vision to Reality, where participants openly discussed the occupation and ethnic cleansing of the Strip. So, great trust comes as Israeli forces push deeper into Gaza City amid a growing engineered famine that has killed at least hundreds of Palestinians and is starving thousands more. Israel's 696-day assault and siege on Gaza has left at least 233,000 Palestinians dead, wounded, or missing, according to the Gaza Health Ministry, whose casualty figures are seen as a likely undercount by experts. So, Collin, let me remind you, all the way back in May of 2024, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Me and Indy covered a Vanessa Beeley article talking about Netanyahu's dystopian vision for Gaza's future. I have the Substack to this episode linked in the description. You're welcome to go down there and look. It also has Vanessa Beeley's article linked, right? This article right here, right? Look. Does this image look familiar?
Yeah.
Okay. This again was from May 10th of 2024. Right? So if you're paying attention to the show, you're literally a year ahead of everybody else. Okay? And then some. A year and then some. Like, we've done past May, right? Of May 2025, been long gone by now. Right? So, yeah, I mean, So hold on, my PowerPoint thing broke again, but it's okay. I'm gonna get caught up. I promise. Back. So, so in that article, Vanessa Beeley translated a Ynet article, right? So here's that Ynet article, right? This is the utopian vision for the strip. Okay. So in that Ynet article, look at the pictures they include. These are the pictures they include in this Ynet article, right? These ones that we just saw a minute ago. I wonder where they got them. Well, they got them from a fucking PowerPoint. The same fucking PowerPoint. This time in Hebrew. How the motherfucking WAPO get a fucking scoop, breaking scoop from a year ago? How that shit fucking happened? Huh? Like, granted, it has a couple more slides in it, but like, it's the fucking same PowerPoint. I want to fucking strangle people. Like, catch up. Where we've been talking about this shit. Welcome to the club. All right. Any thoughts?
We talked about this offline, like yesterday. Like, technically, we talked about this with Brett for a similar issue nearly 2 years ago, because he wrote an article that we talked to him about on the show regarding Israel, like the connection of the real estate industry here, like selling plots in the West Bank, which is illegal. And or I believe, I forget like the full details, but in Gaza, but he thought it was a joke. Like the way he kind of presented, he thought it was a joke, and we were like, no, it's not. So, but yeah, so kind of on the line there, 2 years ago almost.
Yeah,
that
I know there might be people that might be off limits at Common Dreams, but they're not off limits to you, Brett. You can go fucking read them. I know you're out here, you're paying attention, and it's not just you. Like, I'm more mad at everyone else and the WAPO. I'm definitely mad at the WAPO. So for being like, oh, this is brand new scoop, just released, just circulating. Like, no, it fucking been here. Like, we've been new. Thanks for catching up. But anyway, I think I've yelled at people enough. Pay attention. Go follow Vanessa Beeley. She'll keep you a year ahead of everyone else. But any last thoughts other than YouTube's demonetized us for talking about this shit a year ago?
Please subscribe.
Yeah, subscribe. Also, we appreciate any dollars you can help keep the lights on over here. You can scan that QR code or go to ko-fi.com/Indie News Network, or it's always in the description below if you would like to go do that. If you're one of the poors like ourselves and can't help us monetarily, just share the video. It's literally like the least you could do. You sat here and watched the whole thing. Like, you're at the end of the video. You might as well leave a comment while you're here. Press the like button, and tell us what you think. Like, especially with those smart cities might be coming to a town near you here soon. You might let me know how you feel about that. But otherwise, thanks for watching. Dope. We did it. We made it.
He did it. He made
it.
Just barely.
Yep. Appreciate chat hanging in there with us. But anyway, what do we got coming up next week?
More than 3 hours. They can watch us. That generally does it about that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I don't think there's really anything different, honestly.
Yep.
Just follow us on Twitter at Kennedy News. Keep up to date.
Yep. Also follow us at Substack.
What the happenings are.
Links in the doobly-doo. And as David Lynch would like to remind people...
Nuts. Who gives a fucking shit how long a scene is?
Yeah, exactly. Cares if we do a 3-hour show? Y'all are still here. But anyway, we got to go to bed.
Actually,
People
more
got
if you
real
came
lives.
in later, so appreciate you doing that.
But anyway, as always, we appreciate you watching. And remember, kids, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, fam.
Have a good week, everyone.
There's a difference between peace and liberation, is there not? You can have injustice and have peace. Isn't that correct? And peace and be enslaved.
Yes.
So peace isn't the answer.
No.
Liberation is the answer.